It's starting. The hangout on air is live. That's perfect. Jamar, say something.
What's happening?
Okay, switching to Jay. It's perfect.
Excellent.
Okay. Now all we got to do is wait for people to show up. So I'm thinking once we have 100 people, we'll be good to go.
Okay. Very cool. I'm glad you guys like the channel, man. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I pretty much. Okay, so that's the control room.
This is Jamar Thomas.
This is Jamar Thomas. Oh yeah, dude, you're absolutely my favorite. 8 viewers. Okay, so we got viewers. How do I see the chat?
There you go. All right. Now I see the chat. Yeah, I see it on my side.
Son of a bitch.
Jonathan Melton says it is working. So yeah.
Oh, perfect, right there. Chat.
Yeah, but how come we can't see what he's seeing?
All right, test. You see me, right?
Oh my God, this is back and forth. It's going to be weird. Girl, that's funny.
That's what it's supposed to do, girl. All right.
So wait, how come we're not seeing the rest of the chat though?
Are other people chatting?
Yeah, they're.
Yeah, they are. I'm seeing a whole list of it. It's going to the side. I have 2 screens. So I have one screen that I'm looking at the news. When you guys see me looking to the side, it's because there's a massive screen on the side.
Here's another.
Everything looks good. Is that a pickle on the walls? Is that a pickle on the walls? That's a background. That's a green screen. Do we get compensation for tendencies for the live stream interruptions? I love that.
What did they say?
Do we get compensation tendies for the live stream interruption?
Yeah, tendies.
Tendies are a big thing with this group here.
Yeah. We had one guy that was supposed to call in. He's like, I got to eat my tendies first.
Yeah, we had this giant existential discussion, but it got halted because of his tendies.
Yeah. and then we also have a vegan group within our group. So they were like, tendies?
Wait, what are tendies? I don't know what tendies are.
Chicken fingers, like chicken tenders.
Oh, tenders. I see tenders.
Yeah.
Tendies. That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, dude. All right, this is great. This is great. Okay, so we got 46 viewers, so we're halfway there. Guys, we're gonna start at 100 folks. So get your popcorn.
You watch them? Is that Vin and Sori? Vin and Sori on YouTube. That's literally the Vin and Sori. It's S-O-R-I.
There was no soda in the fridge. And so I was like, Dorian, is there soda in the fridge downstairs? And he was like, he went and he checked and there was. I'm like, did you put it in there? He's like, well, if you're happy, I'm probably the one that did it.
All right, guys. So we got Jamar in the house. Once we get to 100, then we're gonna be going for it. What we're gonna talk about is socialism. So he and I are gonna have an interview. I'm gonna bounce a bunch of questions off of him. Sori's gonna bounce a bunch of questions off of him, and then we're gonna open it up for discussion. We're gonna let you guys Skype in like normal, and you can either talk to myself, Sori, or the big homie Jamar. So it's gonna be really, really good. Like we always do, if you have disagreements, disagree stridently, disagree passionately, but we are not doing any ad hominem. Ad hominem is Latin for against the man. So no arguments against the man, against the person. If you want to say that Vin is an idiot, that's fine. You want to say something about me, that's cool. But you can't say anything against my guest, and you definitely can't say anything against my girl. Fuck you up. You know that. I'll do it in love, though, because I love y'all. We're at 88 viewers, Jamar.
Uh-oh. 88.
Crunch time. It's crunch time. You know what I'm going to do, babe?
You know what?
Since we're not running the heavy-duty camera,
Can I
What's that?
can I like do a live video from my phone? Because remember how people aren't getting the notifications? So we were supposed to send a little short one. Oh, that already happened.
We did like
though.
2 or 3
Yeah,
of them.
okay,
So
all right, good.
we had 160 at one point, but Vinny couldn't figure out how to work the computer Dora.
I know it's complicated though.
Did you unplug that monitor?
Yes. Do you want me to plug it back in?
Order 5 order.
Okay.
98 viewers. Jamar, you nervous, my brother? You scared?
Not really. I don't get scared about I don't think I've ever gotten scared for an interview or conversation. I've been weirded out. I remember being on a radio station in DC, but that was more because I was on a radio station in DC. And the guy, it was a weird shift in intensity. I'll put it that way. Like everything is great, and then all of a sudden it's like we're on the radio, we're on air. That's weird in and of itself. And then it gets into an argument while we're on air, which even gets weirder because it's like, okay, we're on a radio station. And I don't know why. There shouldn't really be that much of a difference between a radio station and a YouTube channel, but for whatever reason, it felt different. But after the first go around, at that point, it became, more familiar. But no, it's a channel, man. It's what it is.
Awesome.
Is what it is.
All right, cool.
Tina Banks. I'm pleased to meet you too, Tina Banks. Love to villagers. Pony sees you. I engage with my audience all the time, so that part I'm somewhat used to. And as you know, we have a political community, so they're pretty vigorous, and in regards to getting across their feelings on this stuff. But nevertheless, usually they tend to be pretty decent people.
Yeah, our folks are very, very passionate metal community, but they're like, they know everything about pretty much every topic, so it's going to be great.
Do you need Elgato?
I don't need Elgato right now. Okay, this is perfect. I think we're good. We are Gucci. Okay, so babe, if you could do the introduction.
This one's Conversations.
It's Conversations, Vin and Sori.
Yeah, I got it. Welcome to Conversations with Vin and Sori. Tonight we have Jamar L Thomas on with us, and we're going to be talking about socialism versus. Wait a minute, what are we talking about? I know
filthy
socialism.
Swine capitalism.
Welcome to the show. I knew it was about socialism, but I was like, are we going there? What are we talking about?
We are going there for sure. Okay, Jamar, thank you so much. And you've got the distinct honor of being the very first guest of Conversations with Vin and Sori.
Nice.
As far as like our live stream, all that. So I'm seeing the chat on the side, and then we've got Jamar, so we are good to go. You guys already know the rules. I don't have to reiterate them. The way it's going to go down is I'm going to ask Jamar a bunch of questions. Sori's going to ask Jamar a bunch of questions. And then after that, we're going to let folks do questions on the chat as well as Skype in. You guys already know the number, Vin and space Sori?
Yeah.
Vin and space Sori, and you will get to talk to the man himself. Now, I listen to this dude probably every single day.
No way. Oh, dude.
True story.
He does.
And so,
Oh
so when Alexandra Ortiz, you know what? I might get her. You never know. I'm working on Noam Chomsky. Hey, look, we got some pretty big name people in the music world. You guys are gonna see.
Yeah. Oh, you guys are gonna be excited.
It doesn't get bigger than the people that we've been able to contact.
It's not my birthday, guys. I don't know how this rumor got started. My birthday's January 28th.
Who knows? Maybe we'll get Noam Chomsky. Actually, Jamar was the one that put me on to Chomsky. That was,
really?
Yeah, it was you.
Oh, because I sent him that. Well, I got a few people who I watch a lot, and it shocked the hell out of me that I got the people. I think Dora was probably one of the bigger ones. Abby Martin was another one. And it boiled down to, hey, I have a show. Would you like to come on my show? And them saying, sure, yes. And it's like me being like, oh, my God. that type of thing. But nothing gets, you get nothing without an ask. I just asked. That's what it boiled down to. Chomsky was nice as can be. Chomsky declined, but Chomsky was nice as can be.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe we get him on. If we're lucky enough to get him on, we'll have you on, my guy. For sure.
Oh wow. Yeah. No, Chomsky's awesome, man.
So you know what's interesting? So we do reviews of metal songs, Jamar, and there have been a couple songs that have been political, and so I've gone after what's her name? The big $30,000 Rhodes Scholar person.
Rachel Maddow?
Rachel Maddow.
Yes.
I've gone after Rachel Maddow, right? And inevitably people say, "Oh, you right wing, blah blah." I'm like, I'm quoting Jamar L Thomas, of course. I was of the assumption that everybody knew who you were. The most legit guy in
Random guy on the web. How dare they not who I am?
They're like, who the fuck is Jamal? Who's that? I was like, that just shows how ignorant you are. Anyway, so here's the thing. I'm gonna put it out here, Jamal. We are like hardcore evangelical Christians, right? Like hardcore.
Then
However,
you should be on the right. I mean, on the left.
Well,
Not
right,
Democrats
right.
on the left. All I'm saying is, look, I've made this argument, and I will try this argument here, that there is no such thing as a Christian Republican. And people hate it when I say that. That's pretty brash. You know, that's one of those things you put out there and people are like, how dare you, sir? I'm a Republican, you know, and I'm a Christian and everything else. I make the point, nonsense. I don't think you can do both. What was the quote? I mean, Jesus wasn't this raging Republican. Like this idea that the guy who was, you know, throwing over the money tables and this, what is this thing? You better of a camel going through the head of a pin than a rich man getting into heaven.
Yeah, I
I'd like to forget that little quote. That quote is there for a reason. This egalitarian reasoning. Where on earth does Paul Ryan, supposedly a Catholic, kill Medicare? Like, think about it from the standpoint of humanitarian terms, which is better? This idea of somebody else is getting profit or this person not getting health care. And which one would Jesus prefer? Like, is Jesus, or, you know, I think of it in those terms, especially when people tell me they're a Christian. I think of it in those religious terms. Okay, fair enough. Then we can discuss the morality of the stuff. And let's get into this idea of what does it mean? You know, what's more Christian? You know, is it what you consider to be the Republican Party or, but see, I don't think there's a manifestation of the left in Democratic politics. I think a Sanders or an Ocasio gets closer to that type of manifestation. But when you hear somebody make the moral argument, if you listen to Sanders make that moral argument versus a Paul Ryan make his argument, which side do you think is more moral from the standpoint of humanitarian concerns?
Well, so there's this one quote from, it was Ron Paul. I want to say it was about, I don't know which debate it was. I don't know how long ago it was, but he basically was like, and he was perplexed. He's like, why does everybody think that we're supposed to give everyone health care? And then that one, right? I wish I could have fired up the clip.
Like it depends on a lot of parts of argument is dependent upon the position of the people involved in the argument. Because what world frame, you know, do they use? Like, what's the way they're processing their world? Ron Paul's world is processed through these kind of strict libertarian concerns of if the guy's dying on a sheet of healthcare, then that guy didn't, you know, figure out how to jury rig his wig in the marketplace in order to get healthcare. But if your argument is through a Christian context, then that makes the conversation a little bit easier. You know, when Sanders is making this argument of a morality argument, the argument of a morality is kind of hard to do if a person doesn't accept your morality. But I look at the world through humanitarian frame.
Okay, so now let me pose a question, because I'm one of those people, you know, when you were talking about, you and Jimmy Dore talk about how the Democratic Party basically fucked itself because of what they did with Sanders. I'm one of those people. Yeah. I would have probably extended a vote for Sanders because he was that much of a breath of fresh air as far as just some form of humanity in the you know, people don't understand why guys, and you know, this is way on the fringe side, but Alex Jones, when he says this shit about like serpentine people and goblins and shit, like half these people just batshit crazy, but the other half of it is because most of these guys on the left and the right are lacking so much humanity.
Yeah, so true.
I don't think anybody really believes that these people are like serpent people or whatever. Like I said, there's a fringe, but I do think he's tapping into the fact that these people, Trump, Hillary, they're just inhumane in the way that they do their politics. And Sanders was a human being.
Yes.
And I loved him for that. And I will probably eternally resent the Democratic Party, because I am a person who 4 or 5 years ago, if you would have said there's somebody you're going to consider on the left to vote for,
You'd have been
I'd be
shocked.
like, you're out of your fuck. I'd have laughed at you. You're out of your
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah, me
mind.
too.
But
Me too.
Sanders was a person where I said, well, because Obama didn't get me as a black guy. Like,
Yeah.
he didn't get me. Sorry.
He didn't get me either as a woman. Things he was saying. I was
yeah,
like, what?
yeah, I was
Rebel, what?
yeah.
No.
No. But Sanders got me. You know when Sanders got me was when he sat down in the
Was it in the barbershop?
in the barbershop
Me too.
with Killer Mike.
Me too.
Oh, right. I see. Okay.
I was like, what the fuck? What?
Yeah.
This Jewish dude in the
Yeah.
And then I found out some of his background and all that, and I was like, well,
Yep.
okay, this dude. And even the way he carried on after he lost, when people were like trying to bait him into the jihad between Hillary and all that, and he basically said something to the effect of, look, I gotta go, there's a rally or something like.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to be involved in it. He clearly didn't.
Well, he had work to do.
Yeah.
And you know how it is as a busy person. Like when you're busy and you got shit to do, you don't have time to like squabble about bullshit, right?
Of course not. And a lot of
So here's where I'm at. I think we're both here. We don't like killing people over, healthcare. Like you've got a healthcare issue and you didn't save up or you didn't invest or you don't have a job that gives you good insurance. We're gonna fuck you up for the next 19,000 generations.
yes.
I think that is completely immoral. I think that we got to find a way to take care of every single American.
Yes.
Two, I'm not a fan of the school debt thing. I think it's criminal, and I think we're extorting these kids out of high school and telling them that
You are. I mean, I'm saying they are. It's
if you don't go to college, then you're fucked for life. So if you do go to college,
you're fucked for life.
Right.
You can either be in debt or you can be poor. Which one do you want to be? In
Right.
fact, it's
and then
probably
God
gonna be both.
forbid that you're sick and poor, because that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. You're fucked from jump.
So I think that that's immoral. So talk to me about how to solve that problem.
How to solve it? All right. So let's set the framing of this. So the framing of this is you're looking at this from the standpoint of an Ocasio or Sanders type. Like Sanders or Ocasio looking at a political situation, saying from a democratic socialist standpoint, how would they handle the situation? Like what would they be? 2 points. So 2 things. Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez are not socialists. That's the first point. Now, and if you talk to real socialists about this, they will bristle. They will be very angry at you, saying, "How dare you, sir, say this?" They would say that these guys are just classic Democrats. And if you look back at some of the FDR stuff, what they're talking about is essentially going back to FDR type stuff. This kind of.
Do you agree with that? They're not socialists? Both of those?
I don't think they're socialists. I mean, but they're not technically. I mean, socialist boils down to workers owning the means of production. This idea that if you work at something, you should own the thing that you work at, meaning there should be some level of agency between the thing that you do and the place that you work. So the idea of you working somewhere, like for example, 95% of the wealth under Obama went to the top 1%. Think about that. That's so much money. You're talking about all of this money. There was enough wealth to get the top 95% of the wealth under Obama went to the top 1%.
Okay, in the chat, if you disagree with that, in the chat, type 22, and
True.
I will reserve your spot on the call, but you better have some stats, because you know how I get down.
That's not. I don't think that is to be questioned. They may question and say, "Well, Obama came into X or Obama came into Y," but it is true.
Why don't you have them email us with their stats, and then we can just brief the email before you make the call.
Well, I'm doing an experiment, because I want to do, because I've got some hard right people in the room, which I love, but what I want to do is just see how many people would even dispute that.
Oh,
is
I
my
see.
point.
Okay.
Oh, fair enough.
Okay, go ahead, Jamar.
But my point to this is, why is that right? Like, think of all the wealth that's there. Why is that right? And you ask yourself, if that's wrong, should we organize ourselves in a way that that's not true? Now, a socialist wouldn't look at this problem from the standpoint of individuals. Taxation, they would look at it more so from the standpoint of the way we're organized. That's the first point. Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez are just talking about more like a Scandinavian country at most. That's what I'm saying. A socialist would bristle at the accusation. On the second point, from the standpoint of cost, it is cheaper to organize yourself in a way for healthcare. Like, this is not one of those questions of whether or not it's just moral. It is from a religious context, but even from an economic context, it is cheaper. Even in that right-wing bogus study that these guys made from the Mercatus Institute, it was $3.2 trillion that you saved on healthcare. So I'm trying to make this point. It's even from the standpoint of what these right-wingers were trying to put out as propaganda. They were trying to show, hey, look at all the money that the government, it costs the government, missing the point that as Americans, it saves us $3.2 trillion. That's their bogus study. And that's in a bogus study. That's in a study where they hype certain ideas and undermine certain savings that take place in the system itself. I guess I'm trying to make 2 points here: moral and savings. Now, if you're one of these top 1%, and as the top 1%, you don't necessarily want another tax dollar coming out of your pocket to make sure that your fellow Americans are insured, then yeah, you may take issue with that. And you may give Republicans a lot of money to go out and say bad things about healthcare and people getting healthcare. And you may say bad things about Medicare. And you may give Republicans money to go out and try to get rid of Medicare or undermine Medicare or undermine health insurance. But it is cheaper, and I would say it's more moral. Yes, both in terms.
You're of the belief, because we had this as a show. The last time we did a show like this, it was just a call-in show, and we did it to kind of build up to this show. Are you of the belief that healthcare is a human right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, look, morality is emergent. It's not necessarily just an absolute. You must understand those things. There's a difference in those things. It's not, if I am in a war zone and in that war zone, I have a kid, say I have a kid, I'm in a war zone. I kick open the door. There's a woman who has medicine that my kid needs to live. Is it more moral for me to let my kid die? Or is it more moral for me to take those drugs from that person who needs it and give it to my kid? Which one do you do? Now, I would wager to you that most people would make sure that their kid has that drug, meaning they're going to take that drug from that kid, that person. They're not going to watch their kid die. Now, you can say that that's screwed up. You can say that's completely immoral. I would say it doesn't matter because the system and the way that they're operating forces a certain set of behaviors. When your society gets to the point where you can provide those things, it becomes a little easier to be more moral in a sense that we call moral. So, yeah, I think morality is somewhat of an emergent quality. Once you reach that point in your society where you can provide those things, yeah, I think it's immoral to not provide those things, especially when it's hefted against cash. I mean, let's be honest. The only argument that we're having here is how it's going to be paid for. But the understand that the medium of exchange you were talking about is a person getting access to healthcare versus cash in somebody's wallet, a digit that many of these people won't even know it's there. I mean, I find this argument to be amazing. I was on a camel in Egypt, literally, when a guy turned to me and said, "Go Obama." And he barely spoke English. The only thing he could say was Obama. And I remember having multiple conversations when I was traveling through Egypt about Obama getting in office. And I thought, healthcare is going to be a gimme. Like, who's going to be against healthcare? Like, this is a gimme. It's easy. And I get back into the country and people are flipping out about healthcare. I'm like, this is amazing. Democrats ran away from it. They ended up, instead of doing Medicare for all, this ridiculously complicated legislation that they ran from like it was the plague. Instead of him doing something straightforward, like, a public option, Obama lied and went back on what he was saying during the campaign trail. He said he wasn't going to have this thing of forcing people to get healthcare. That's exactly what he did. He protected drug companies. So instead of having drug companies to have to, where the government itself would force down the cost of drugs, so one company can't raise a drug cost like 4 times, 10 times. He allowed those things to go without. So companies could raise the cost of drugs. And in many cases, we found out he wasn't even going to fight for it at some point. Some of the other people who were in the lefty movement had to kind of push his hand in politics. Yeah, it wasn't a great, let's say it wasn't great. Let's put it that way. And the fact that it started falling apart during the election, damn sure it didn't necessarily help Clinton get elected. I mean, you had a situation where healthcare costs in some states went up 50%. Healthcare was supposed to be fixed. You went through all of that political capital to get through healthcare, and your healthcare rates are going 50%.
I know a bunch of down and out people that got fucked royally by Obamacare.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it was just horrible the way that it was. That's one of those things where you got to be all in. Like
it has to work. Like if somebody asks you, if you do a poll of the country about Social Security and Medicare, always high ratings. Always high ratings. You would even get Republicans saying, you know, keep your damn hands off my Medicare, missing the point that Medicare is the government itself.
Right. Medicare is a form of socialized medicine.
It's socialized medicine. That's literally what it is. People, well, ish. It's a medium of it's the intermediary. It's like we are lowering costs by saying that together it's cheaper for the government to do it. That's what it boils down to. Like it may cost, I think it's 3% overhead for the government to do what the insurance companies are doing for some ridiculous amount of money. It's just a cheaper exchange. The government just does it easier because it has more people that it can bring under the umbrella to do it. But yeah, it's socialized medicine. It's for all intents and purposes, people consider it socialized medicine. I guess I'm being too specific and being too literal. It's not the government owning doctors. Like it's not where the doctors are like postmen. You know what I mean? Like in England, where the doctors are like given a government check. So it's not that. That's why I'm bristling at. It's socialized medicine because technically it's not in that sense.
Right.
But it is where the government is allowing you to get to a doctor and doing it in a way to kind of lower costs in doing it. Let's say it that way. I'm trying to be too specific. Yes.
The ticker is closer to socialism than it is to capitalism, though.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Now let me ask you a question. Do you believe, and I'm gonna pick out some audience look, Ellie Gallego, if you want to call in. If you want to be that Ben Shapiro, do it. And I'm not being funny about it. I'm just saying we got the big homie on the line. Call him up. He'd be willing to talk to you.
I'm willing to talk. I'm not I'm anti-capitalist. Yes, I'm not a socialist though. I don't want to.
Exactly what I wanted to ask you about. Tell me what you think Let me ask you a series of yes or no questions. Is capitalism a moral system?
No. First, it depends on what you mean by moral. Based on what I would consider morality, no.
No. Okay.
But go ahead. I'll let you go for it. Sometimes it's these words. It's like it's so slippery. It depends on what they mean. I look at this stuff from a humanitarian lens. So for me, morality.
You're a secular humanist, would you say?
Oh, I hate these labels, but okay, yeah. For the sake of debate, yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay, so you're a secular humanist. So as a secular humanist, you'd say no. The capitalism is not.
I don't think it's moral. Yeah, I don't think it's moral.
Okay, this is not a yes or no question. I just broke my own rule. What is immoral about capitalism?
I look at this stuff kind of like a bit of code. Like, what is the logic of your system? What is the logic of the way you guys are arranged? If the way you have incentivized the people of your society is to maximize their profit, then that's what they're going to do. And we've created these kind of systems where people. I give an example. Like if I wanted to hire somebody to do video work or video equipment, I have a channel to run, and because I have that channel to run, there are two things that I need to abide by. I need to make as much as I can because I just want to. Profitable enterprise. But also I need to do something where people would watch the show and watch the channel itself. Meaning I need to put up content that those people would like to see. If I'm hiring anybody, that also is going to be a competing objective, meaning the amount of that person gets in order to live is going to be hefted against how much I'm going to make to maximize my profit. Meaning in order for me to do what I want to do, I need to get the most out of that person while paying that person the least. That allows me to make as much as I can possibly make. Now you have a system where this is your society where this takes place on multiple levels all throughout your system. You may have some people who say they're good human beings and try to pay their people a decent wage. I would guarantee you for all the people that have those, you would have more that don't. How many people, disaffected people, do you have in your system that hate their job? And I would guarantee you that's the majority of your system. I would wager to you that if you have so many, the opioid abuse that you're having, I would wager to you that has something to do with the mental hardship that people are having in the system where they're barely making ends meet. You have half of your system working a low wage or a minimum wage job.
Okay, now stop right there, Jamar, because I've got a criticism for you. You ready for this?
Go for the criticism.
How can you sit there and complain about capitalism when it was capitalism that brought us the very forum that we're using to talk right now?
The internet? Capitalism for us, the internet?
Google,
all of these things,
all that jazz.
They understand that the things that they're talking about were invested in by the government, by the state. Like it's not the situation that they have this utopian idea that there were some capitalists out there that just created the internet. These things were originally military systems that were supposed to, withstand and sink in the case of some kind of Holocaust where everything goes to hell. These things were invested in by the government itself. So yeah, I can definitely complain about something if I think that that something is not necessarily for the better ends, or if I think it could be better. Like, I have nothing to defend here. I mean, my argument is your world can be a better place. That's my argument. And I would wager to you that that's the argument of any DSA that you would come across. The world can be a better place than what it is now.
Okay. Now let me ask you a couple more questions.
Wait. Let me make a point, because I made that point. I don't think I made that point as well as it can be made. I just want to say it this way.
Okay.
If you have a system where it's built off of a certain level of exploitation and contradiction, the system is inherently unstable. I would argue to you that your system of capitalism is just that way. You're always going to have a master-slave or boss-employee relationship. And those relationships are always antagonistic to one another, where one person maximizes their profit at the expense of the other person. That, mind you, doesn't even take into effect real things. I mean, the world is a real thing. We don't necessarily consider the environment, even other human beings, in the acquisition of profit. Bezos has $150 billion, and he has employees who still live off the system. I would give you, that's the epitome of the system that you have. That is exploitation at a level that is breathtaking. He doesn't even want to pay people a decent wage where they can live. But I would argue to you that to some degree, your ability to get that product from Amazon is almost, it's necessary for that guy to get that wage. It's an odd system. It's inherently unstable.
Right. So Amazon is able to keep their costs low and destroy all competitors because they pay their workers low wages.
Yes. And not just that. It is in Jeff Bezos' best interest to do that if Jeff Bezos wants to maximize his profit. Not just that, even in Jeff Bezos' best interest to move that job to China and pay that guy that much less.
All right. Now, I wanna. So Majestic Demon Lord, I'm hoping that you're gonna man up and call in.
Majestic Demon Lord.
Oh, Majestic is working.
And he said it's too early for him. He's working.
Soon, I'm going to be able to call in Socialist Bingo. Yeah, it's MJD.
Majestic Demon.
So MJD is one of, or Nexus. You should call in too. No, Nexus. I don't see in a socialist state Jeff Bezos making close to $1 trillion while he's got, 30% of his constituency.
No, and by the way, the wild part about this is the argument that Sanders is making is not a socialist state. Like, that's the wild part. When they make this example of Scandinavia, I think Scandinavia would tell you they're a capitalist state. Everything that we're talking about here, if you're talking about the politics of these guys, are firmly within the vestiges of capitalism. In fact, I would even make the case that it is the savior of capitalism, not the undermining of capitalism. That's why socialists dislike Bernie Sanders. Ultimately, what you're considering, the reason why you're finding people flipping out and to some degree pissed off at the way things are, people never interrogate why you have so many people having a resurgence of socialism. You used to have it. During the first time where you had the banks crash, where you had the Great Depression, you had all sorts of people who were socialists and communists and all these other various aspects of different parties in the country. No one interrogates that question. Why are these people all of a sudden flipping out now? Why does Richard Wolff get invites all across the country? And why do you have somebody who's a socialist who's about to go to Washington, D.C.? When people are under stress, those people look for something else. That's just where it is. And the fact is, you have a situation where you have some people who are making fantastic amounts of money. And in a situation where people are making fantastic amounts of money, did you see Donald Trump just canceled the raise, the modest raise that workers were going to get? These people were people who supported Trump. Now, I would make the point to you that the issue here is of class.
Hold on, Jamar. Break down for everybody the what he did on the federal level for raises.
Yeah, so there were supposed to be raises by the federal government that they were going to go to certain sectors of federal workers. Trump canceled those raises. He put a freeze on them. Now, Obama put a freeze on them also. The funny part is they give Obama a pass on putting a freeze on him because they said there was kind of economic stress. I don't think I'd give him that pass, but okay. But there is no reason at all for Trump to put a pass on it. I mean, Trump just gave a massive tax cut. I mean, he gave a grotesque level of tax cut. You're talking in trillions of dollars. And those are trillions of dollars that are on our backs. We're going to have to pay that money back. There's over $1 trillion of debt that Donald Trump put on the debt on Republicans that put on their backs, while at the same token, giving themselves a massive tax cut, saying that he was never going to do that and did just that, while putting a freeze on the amount of money that's going to federal workers. And Donald Trump's excuse for this is we have to tighten our belts because we have economic difficulties. We need to tighten our belts. We can't let the deficit get out of full-blown effect and everything else. They put $9 trillion of debt.
Why do the tax cuts then?
Exactly. Now, you would look at this as a human being saying, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. It makes sense from a level of the Republicans don't care about the debt. What they do care about is elements of their class. Why on earth would Donald Trump say he's going to give big, beautiful tax cuts? Big, beautiful health care and all this other stuff. If you remember when he was on a campaign trail, he said he was going to replace Obamacare. Now, his replacement for Obamacare was Trump Care, which was worse Obamacare. Why? That makes no sense. If healthcare is cheaper from the standpoint of supplying it to everybody, like what makes more logical sense? Supplying healthcare to everyone if healthcare is cheaper, or keeping the system that we have now where we pay twice as much, but we don't get the same level of care as other nations. We pay more for less. That's our current system. And the political class, Democrats too, to some degree, would like to keep the current system in place or go with an Obamacare, which, look, what this boils down to is what took place in Hawaii. In Hawaii, you had lobbyists for the healthcare industry talk to various Democratic congressional members, and they had a dossier on each of the members in regards to what the members would support. And then when they came out, the dossier was leaked. And what you found out was that the conversations that they had with the healthcare industry, the lobbyists, people who were for the drug companies and for insurance companies, you can imagine that these people would be against any level of socialized medicine, in which case they would consider to be this kind of Medicare for all. And when it was leaked, it came out that these guys were in the tank for all of the insurance industries and that these guys were going to be against Medicare for all. When they talked to their base, of course, that's not what they said. They said something different. When they talked to their base, they were for it. When they talked to the lobbyists, they were in the pocket of the lobbyists saying, we will be against it. They're against these things because it would cost them cash. The people who are putting money in their pockets, meaning the political class, it is in their best interest to not have Medicare for all because it cuts down on the amount of money of healthcare costs. If you pay less for healthcare costs, you're paying them less. The fluff, the difference, the reason we pay twice as much for healthcare is not because Americans get more healthcare. That's the point that you need to understand. It's because they just charge you more. That's the key point.
Now,
they want to continue to charge you more. That's what it boils down to. The money that they're paying these guys in the political class is to keep things the same.
Right.
People like Sanders and Ocasio is, we want Medicare for all. We want this to be cheaper for us.
Jamar, I've got a criticism of you. I was listening to the show, and you had this psychotic. I think the kid was a Leninist. I think you know who I'm talking about.
Oh, I know you're talking about.
He was.
Oh God, I know you're talking about. Uru, Jason Uru.
Yeah, the psychotic. Yeah.
He was a Maoist. I think he was a Maoist.
Yeah, well, he was talking about how Lenin wanted to quit, and the people were like, no, Lenin, stay. And he was basically, he wouldn't come out and say it because he was hardcore.
Yeah, he was hardcore.
He was basically saying that we needed to have a cultural jihad and
he was hardcore. Jason Uru is hardcore. He's hardcore.
And
He's hardcore.
Jamar, you didn't stop him and say, "You're fucking crazy. What the fuck is wrong with you? You're talking about killing a whole bunch of people for your revolution."
I asked
Why?
him.
Hold on.
Go
Why
ahead.
didn't you? Now I understand because I talk to people I disagree with all the time. You're one of them. I just happen to agree with you on this particular topic, but I think on pretty much everything else I disagree with you. But why didn't you stop this guy and say, "You're fucking crazy"? And here's the second part to why that's an important question to me.
Go for it.
The compassionate side of the left that says we cannot do this to our people. We've got to have some basic. Some of this stuff is axiomatic, like it's clear, obvious.
Yeah.
We can help people. You know, the
Just
good
as
obvious. But one of the things I do not like is that there seems to be a real resentment for people who work their asses off to gain capital. I mean, Jamal, like you're a YouTuber, you put out consistent content, I put out consistent content. You know, you're gonna, in a year or two or three, you're gonna be much bigger than what you are, and you're gonna be earning more than you need necessarily. Probably the same thing for us, but you and I both know how hard it is to get to that level. Why is there this? Are you concerned on the left side about elements fringe? Maybe I don't even know how fringe they are because I'm not on the left, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But are you concerned, as I am, about that type of rhetoric and resentment and lack of understanding that there are people in this country that get wealthy because they work hours and days that other people will not commit to working?
Yeah. So yeah, Jason Url. So he's hardcore. Yes, he's a Maoist. I got to be honest. He was the first Maoist I've come across.
Okay.
And part of the reason he was on the show because I was amazed that it was a Maoist. It was like, holy shit, this guy's a Maoist. Like it was kind of that. Like this was kind of like seeing
it was Twilight Zone for sure.
Well, it was fascinating. That's why I would ask him, are you going to shoot the cops? Like I wanted him to say it. I wanted him to say, yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Because ultimately the conversation, look, this is why I say Sanders and Ocasio aren't real hardcore socialists in this way. And people who are going after them for this are kind of missing the boat on this because that's not what they are. They never said they were this. They never said they wanted to take over.
He went after them hard. He said that they were worse than Trump.
Yeah, well, and that's what I want to say. The reason why he says they're worse than Trump. Look, Urul's argument. I want Urul to speak his case. I don't want to shut people up. I want him to make his point. Sometimes letting people make their point is more damning than not letting them make their point. If I'm asking him, are you going to shoot the cops? Yeah, make your point. Say
Okay.
that that's what you're going to do, because that's what it boils down to. Usually, I don't get into arguments with people who are further to the left than I am. Usually it's talking to some people who are to the right.
That guy's crazy, Jamar.
He's far to the left. I'm going to say it that way. And I say it that way because there's a logic to what he says. Well, there's a logic to what he says. If, from his standpoint, FDR screwed up America. Now, the reason he would say that, and the reason why some socialists will say it, and even could say the same thing about Bernie Sanders, is because they consider it takes a certain amount of chaos to create change in a society. There's usually an inflection point where people will get so pissed off that they're sick of the way things are that they want change. I'm sick of this, and there's a certain amount of agreement of change. But that's not when things are going well. That's not when people, look at the world and say, okay, things are going relatively well for me. That's usually when there's chaos. The whole thing of, FDR coming in with sweeping changes was to save capitalism in a weird way. FDR even said it himself. I saved capitalism because they were people who were going to get pissed off and they were going to take your stuff. If it wasn't for me doing that and settling society and saving the capitalistic system, this thing would have imploded. That's their logic. So when they look at somebody like Ocasio, they think if this thing gets pissed off enough or people get angry enough, that things will change. Now, from the standpoint of Sanders is like, I want to make people's lives easier. Ocasio thinks the same thing. But from their standpoint, from the level of somebody who's that in his head and the way that he processes reality, doing that stabilizes the capitalistic system. And from his standpoint, that's not what he wants. He wants chaos. So if I'm asking him, are you going to shoot the cop? In his mind, I'm a revolutionary, but I'm not that much of a revolutionary. Well, say it. If I'm inwards to you, if I'm further to the right than you, then that means to some degree from his standpoint, I'm a reformer. Fair enough. I'll play that role of a reformer. Are you going to shoot the cop? And if you're not willing to say yes to that, then you don't believe it to the way that you say you believe in it. From the standpoint of some people who are radicals to the left, they say they want a different world. Are they wrong for saying they want a different world? If you have enough people who come together as a collective and democratically say they want something different, are those people wrong? Do you no longer believe in democracy? I'm asking the question.
Well, no, I'm good with democracy. I'm good with trying public debate.
But his case is chaos. I think your point is that seems like chaos to me. That seems like
here's the bigger thing. The USSR started out initially as a socialist state. That's what the S in USSR is. I mean, am I right on that?
Ish, yes, ish.
And then it turned into violent and the gulags and killing a whole bunch of people. So when I see a guy like that, on the one hand, I say, okay, he's on the fringe, but on the other side, I'm like, I'm wondering if there's something beneath the system, an attitude of socialism that plants a seed for that type of violent jihadism that doesn't get checked.
I had to be honest. I didn't know. He's, I think, what they call a third worlder. Now, I don't fully understand this ideology, but this is not normal. I don't like to use this term normal. This is not normal ideology, though. Like, this is not the normal left, if that makes sense. This is somewhat of an extreme measure of the left that I was more so curious about, which is why I brought him on the show. But I got to be honest, I don't know anybody else who's like Uru. Now, if you're asking, are there people who want the system to be different and change? Yes. Do I know anybody who wants chaos like that? No. Okay.
And I think that's fair. I think he's fringe. I've got one of my buddies.
I know of no one else like that. Like I found one of my subscribers say, "Hey, check out Uru," and I was listening to him, and I was like, "Okay, this is interesting." And I heard he was a Maoist, and I was like, "He's a Maoist! Oh my God, he's a Maoist!"
Look at this. This is what happens to me every day, Jamar. Look at this. Somebody just says, "Does Vin criticize the fringe right like this too? It'd be cool if he did." Pete, the entire show is a criticism of the right, period. Not the fringe right, the right.
Oh, and by the way, the fringe right also has its, the fringe right also has its, ideologues. Like,
of course.
Like, so
one of which is in the White House right now.
Well, right. I mean, I don't think Trump is. I don't think Trump is as fringe as I think you think fringe right can be. I mean, getting to the point of saying shutting down the press, shutting down freedom of speech, shutting down gay marriage, shutting down, interracial, like it can get worse. Trump is not a manifestation necessarily of being that extreme. But yeah, he's bad.
You're a nuanced thinker. I love it. Okay. So now Elio Mike. Elio Mike is my resident right-wing Second Amendment guy. If I bring you back to the Second Amendment, and Elio Mike will give you a run for your money. Elio Mike, can you call?
I don't know how I feel about the Second Amendment, if I'm being honest. I mean, I think it's nonsense that people, they fetishize it.
Maybe I'm stereotyping you. Elio Mike.
Trump is a great man. Trump is not a great man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't even know why you think that.
All right. Elio Mike is going to call. Okay. So Elio Mike, call us up and we're going to let you go and handle your biz, my brother.
Trump is a great man. I'm sorry, dude. You've been had. He's not.
Well, look, if you think Trump is a great man, call up. The show is open. We've got about an hour left. So I've got more than enough time for people to call in. This happens all the time, Jamar. It's like I'll say something provocative, and then people have their opinions, but then they never call in.
By the way, how many people do we have in our prisons in our country?
All right, now Jamar, I've got Elio Mike on the line. How many
people do we have in our prisons?
Hold on, Mike. Mike. Elio Mike. You got to mute your TV or whatever it is, my man.
Yeah, I couldn't. I'm watching indie racing, so I just paused it.
Okay. Were you paying attention to?
Yeah, I was on the chat as well.
Okay. Hold on for a second.
You have to switch the thing to say that mic, though. Right?
Switch to what?
Is this Google Hangouts is saying, hey, use that mic?
Internal mic, Sam G-Track Pro. Go. All right, we're good. Save. Boom. Okay, can you hear? Jamar, give us a thumbs up, Jamar, if you can hear.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you. You're good.
Okay. All right. So I've got Elio Mike on the line. He's my resident rightist. So Elio Mike, talk to us about why Jamar is crazy.
Than anything.
Say again?
I said I'm more of a libertarian than anything.
You're libertarian. Okay. Even worse. Okay. Mike.
I would probably agree with half of what he says. But go ahead.
All right, Mike, talk to Jamar and explain to him why he's crazy about socialism.
Well, from listening to you guys, you're obviously talking about social programs, right? And he's denying that he's a pure socialist, correct?
Well, I'm not. Two things. I've already said, yeah, I'm not a socialist, and B, right. They're talking about social programs as socialism. Yeah, they understand socialism as social programs.
I'm okay with social programs helping the needy and healthcare for the people that really need it. Maybe even more college help for the people that really need college help. But universal healthcare for everybody is crazy, and paying for everybody's college is crazy. I just think, I have no problem with helping those that are in need.
Okay.
But
so Mike, tell us why, and Jamar, you've had a lot of time, so I want Mike to articulate why universal healthcare is, quote, crazy.
Well, partly, I don't think it's affordable in this country, and when people point to like the social democrat systems in Europe, as like a case in point of where it works, those only worked. Number one, they're very homogeneous societies when they first started, and they also had the benefit of the U.S. paying their strategic defense from like the 50s on, so they didn't have to worry about the USSR encroaching on their territory. They didn't have to worry about doing that stuff, so they were able to put way more of their budget towards these social programs, which the U.S. didn't have the ability to do because we were paying for the entire West strategic defense.
Whoa, hold on for a second. What countries are you talking about specifically? Are you talking about all of Europe, or are you talking about specific countries?
Scandinavia. What other European social countries are held up as the ideal? When I was in college getting my BA in criminology, all these liberal professors always pointed to Sweden as this utopian socialist system or democratic socialist system as the way that America should be. And I knew from very early on that system there could never work here.
Because so are you saying that we were providing defense for the Swiss?
Everybody in the West.
Okay.
Our missile systems, our subs, our bombers, the entire nuclear arsenal kept the Soviet Union at bay. If you think they would have stopped at Poland and would have moved entirely into Germany and then moved into Scandinavia and then moved in farther down into beyond Hungary and Romania and all that, you're crazy. They would have absolutely kept on moving. If we become isolationist and drew in our borders and not provided this envelope of protection to the Western world, the Soviet Union would have absolutely expanded.
Okay. So your argument is that of course these guys had excess capital to redistribute because they weren't worrying about defense, whereas we as America, we have to worry about all that shit plus protecting these other people who are leeching off of us. Is that pretty much the idea?
Pretty much.
Okay, Jamar, how do you respond to that, my brother? I've never heard that before. This is why I said I'm totally ignorant. I need to get people on the phone. So thank you for that argument. Jamar, how do you respond to that?
I don't know what homogeneity has to do with healthcare. I have no idea what that has to do with healthcare. So I don't necessarily give that as credibility. Argument. That was your first argument, homogeneity. There were homogeneous societies, in which case, in the context of healthcare. I don't know what that has to do with
I think that helps in social systems with brother helping brother and people helping people. You're more likely to get people willing to pay higher taxes if they are all kind of in the same tribe.
So, I see. So, but to be fair, though, the high taxes it doesn't hit us evenly, right? I mean, what you're talking about is progressive taxation. There are some people who have a certain amount of, let's say, more income to their name than others, and they don't necessarily mind helping others in the society if they look like each other, like this person having the same racial demographic as another. Let's be specific about what we're saying.
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Sweden. I mean, people in America.
Wait. Answer what I just said. Is that what you're saying?
I guess I can't say it again. I guess I'm going to talk about.
Did he hear what I said?
I think we have a little bit of a lag, so I might have talked over you.
Okay, hold on.
Explain to him what I just said, because I want him to answer that.
Can they Skype him directly, and then we just watch that conversation?
Jamal, do you have a phone? Hold on for a second, Mike, because there's an echo, and it's probably because he's hearing me on Jamal's. Jamal, do you have a
phone near me? No.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a phone near me. Can you just tell him what I said? I want him to answer that.
Okay.
Because I want him to explain. I don't want him to use this word homogeneity. I want him to explain explicitly what he's saying, because what he's explicitly saying is this person doesn't look like this other person. And this person who's making more will feel better about giving to this person if they look the same. Meaning, if this person was white, this person will feel better giving to somebody else who was white. If they're, let's say, one person who has more income, in this case of being of a particular demographic, will feel okay with giving more to somebody who looks like themselves. That's essentially what's being said, but I want him to explicitly say that that is what's being said.
Okay, Mike, is that
Swiss is being used as the example. The people in Swiss apparently are supposed to look alike.
What I'm saying is that I believe is the fact in some of these countries, not at all in all countries, but in some of these countries where the socialism is a little more, we're leaning a little more towards socialism. People are willing to have 50% tax rates and 60% tax rates because they all feel like they're part of the same community. And whether or not that's racism or whatever, who knows? I don't feel that way, but I believe a lot of these countries do feel that way, or did maybe back in the 50s and 60s and 70s when these systems were really successful.
okay? All right, I'm going to go back to Jamal now.
Just to be clear, though, you don't know that. I mean, ultimately, you're trying to come up with an explanation on why these countries were using or coming up with healthcare, social systems where they were taking care of one another. What I would tell you is it has less to do with their homogeneity and more to do with the Soviet Union being nearby, and they wanted to compete with this kind of socialistic system. So they themselves were creating these kind of half measures to balance the equations for people not going further. It had nothing to do with their homogeneity. That's the first point. At least I don't think it had to do with their homogeneity.
Jamal, stop right there because I wanted to jump in here. Okay, Mike, I find the homogeneity argument incredibly.
It's because you're hearing from your voice from Jamal. Is that what's happening?
No, hold on. I think I turned Mike's speaker down. What about now?
You know what? It was when you turned this.
You guys still there?
Yeah, can you hear me? Jamal, you there, buddy?
Mm-hmm. Still here.
Okay. So I think
Where's the microphone on this thing?
Hey, Mike, can you hear me? Mike? Mike, you there, buddy? Elio, Mike? Mike, are you on?
I can't hear you.
Mike can't hear me. Why can't Mike hear me? This is your doing.
I never touched anything with your phone, you weirdo.
Okay,
there we go.
Okay, we're back. Okay, Jamal, you good?
Yes.
Okay, so Mike, Jamal's response is no. These countries didn't have a sort of half-baked socialist system because they were all of the same race. It was because they were the Soviet Union was nearby and they didn't want their populace getting any ideas, so they placated them with a halfway system. I mean, is that your argument, Jamal?
Yeah. I mean, United States.
Okay.
Yeah.
That seems way more plausible to me than the homogeneity argument. I think both of those are speculative, but historically speaking, I'm much more on the other side, on Jamal's side, than your side on that. But
FDR said he saved capitalism. I mean, it had to do with the measures that he put in place, not necessarily because, look, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like that the places in Europe couldn't be racist. That is true, but that's grasping at straws to say that them being racist was the reason why they had, social systems.
Yeah, I think that's a terrible argument. But what about I think that's a terrible argument, Mike. But what about the argument that Mike brought up about how
that's also grasping at straws. I mean, ultimately, they're able to do healthcare cheaper. What does that have to do with defense? That has nothing to do with defense.
You're spending billions on defense, though, Jamal. You're freeing up a bunch of capital to to spend on other things, aren't you?
It does free up a bunch of capital, but the United States decided to spend a ton of money on defense. That's up to the United States. How is it their fault that they're spending less for healthcare? Meaning, if they decided to come up with social medicine, and social medicine was a cheaper way to do healthcare, what does that have to do with the defense thing? I mean, they're doing something that's cheaper for them.
Because if you're not spending money on missiles and a standing military, et cetera, that's ready to be deployed anywhere, in 5 minutes, then you've got excess capital in your P&L or your budget to spend somewhere else.
I guess what I'm asking is, what does that have to do with the United States? Those countries made a decision.
Because nobody's doing that for us. We're doing that for everybody else.
I know, but nobody's telling. I guess my point is, nobody's forcing the United States to do that. The United States is choosing to spend that much money, being an empire, mind you. It's being an empire. Now, the United States doesn't have to do that. The United States is choosing to do that. It's a difference in those things. We have a military in 80% of the world. Now, your argument is, well, if the United States didn't spend $1 trillion a year on the military, then the Soviet Union would have essentially gobbled up the world. I don't necessarily take that point of view to be true.
Okay, Mike, how do you respond to that?
Well, I mean, the fact that
the Soviet Union had,
and the Western Europe countries benefited from that by not having to put forth a bigger chunk of their own defense towards strategic defense. And so I think that benefit went towards them being able to put a lot more money into social programs.
Okay, so
the U.S. back and cut way back on our defense budget. That's a decision that has to be made by our representatives. And if I guarantee, if we pulled out of NATO and drew our defense in, you would see a lot of those social systems in Europe crash.
Why would social systems in Europe crash?
On defense.
Because they have to spend the money on defense, Jamar.
But why? You understand that systems in Europe right now are spending additional money on defense, and the United States doesn't want them to do that.
We do.
Wait. But they don't. The United States doesn't want them to do that. But what I'm telling you is, you're
no, Mike, that matters.
No. Let me explain my point.
Hold on. Stop. Time out. So we're gonna let Jamal talk, and then Mike, go for it after.
No problem.
The argument that's being made here goes with the supposition that we're doing them a favor. We're doing them a favor. Having the military bases and everything. The burden of the United States all across the world. Britain used to also say that, the white man's burden. This burden, and I don't mean it from the racial context. That's just what they used to call it. This burden that Europe has to teach these dear savages how to read and all this other stuff. The United States, when Europe started talking about having more military exercise and investing more in military budget in their own programs, the United States was against it. We didn't like them doing that because that interceded. It gets in the way of what we consider to be a certain amount of imperialism around the globe. It is to our benefit of having the military in the way that it is. That's why I don't take your point of being true. Ultimately, it is to the United States' benefit to be able to have somewhat of a world power in this way, not the other way around. I would guarantee you that if those countries started getting more militaristic, we would be against it. So this idea that, we're doing them a favor by having our military systems in those countries is nonsense. That's not true. Ultimately, they're doing us a favor by allowing them to have those systems in those countries.
Brother, that's not his argument, though, Jamal.
That is his argument.
No.
If it was a situation where those countries had to pay more for military, that they wouldn't have to worry about paying more in healthcare. I'm saying that the United States wants to have its military in those countries in the way that it does, meaning that those countries don't have to do it because the United States is not a favor. It's something that we want militarily.
Well, yes. Hold on for a second, though. He's not saying that we're doing this out of the kindness of our hearts. What he's saying is the naked fact that we're doing it frees up
them to have more.
Up capital for them to socialize better than we would be able to.
But that's not true. I mean, how much does he think these countries are spending on their military budget, and how much does he think it would need for these countries to have socialized healthcare?
Okay, that's a good question. Hold on, let me call him back, and that's going to be the final. There's still an echo, and the thing's off.
Wait, hold on. The echo may be coming from me. Let me cut down my volume. just to be on the safe side.
Yeah, can't you just mute
Yeah, I cut down my volume. Hold on.
mute your computer?
And,
To be able to hear us, he needs. If he had headphones on, it would be.
well, no, I can kill this. I can kill this. Hold on, I can kill the volume level.
Okay.
Ooh.
This is a great debate because I've never heard this angle before. Have you?
No,
I've never heard this angle, but this angle I don't think flies. We spend, if I'm not mistaken, less than 2% on our military budget. Those other countries, it's you can do both. Also, sometimes they overhype the threat of the Soviet Union in order to make the argument of healthcare.
Okay, now Jamar.
Okay. Now,
Alec,
the echo should have gone by now.
Alec is saying that the Ukraine is a good example of what happens when the U.S. isn't there to protect smaller countries from bullies.
No, it's not. The Ukraine is an example of what happens when, yeah, not so much. So the United States made a deal with the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union was blessed. That deal was we would not move an inch, meaning NATO was an organization set up for the destruction of the Soviet Union. I mean, they said it's in order to hold back the night and to prevent other countries. But ultimately, it was a line, or it was a political thing that was in opposition to the Soviet Union. Fair enough. That's what it was. Just as a naked way, that's what it was. Now, the argument was when it went bust and when it was going to go belly up, we won't move an inch further, meaning we won't gobble up any more countries and we won't allow any other countries to be within this organization that is against us politically. Well, they went bust, and that's not what happened. More and more countries started joining NATO. Even though there was no Soviet Union, NATO continued to expand. How is this zombie continuing to expand if there's no Soviet Union, and yet it's expanded still? So now you have this situation where these things have gotten to the border of the Ukraine. Ukraine is on the border of Russia. What will you do? Now, taking out right and wrong from standpoint and just looking at the world and political affairs, what do you do? If you had a country or an organization that was against your interests, let's say the Soviet Union was on the border of the United States or close to it, and Mexico was thinking about joining the Soviet Union, what would the United States do? Now, would the United States create some kind of foment of revolution in Mexico in order to create a luft between those two countries? Maybe, yeah. Even if you take right or wrong out of it, because I guarantee you from the standpoint of states and the way that they interact, right and wrong doesn't all that much apply. That's not an example of anything. That's an example of political actors behaving as political actors. Look at what the United States has done, for example. I mean, are we going to act as if the United States is this passive daisy in regards to world affairs? We've gobbled up one nation after the next throughout the Middle East. The world looks at this as if it's no issue. Like, I mean, let's be honest. Let's be very clear. We've destroyed a country from the standpoint of Iraq. We've destroyed another one from the standpoint of Libya. You can buy slaves in Libya right now. And we're having an argument and a conversation on whether Ukraine is a good example on what happens if the United States is not there to protect the country. Come on, let's be honest with this conversation.
That's good. Okay, Mike, this is your last point because we got a couple other people calling in. How do you respond to that?
Well, going back to, the motivations of why we provide strategic defense for the rest of Europe is irrelevant. And you mentioned that, Ben. That isn't part of the argument. The argument is that the fact that our strategic defense is there, and these countries benefited from that economically. Right?
So what? So what?
But hold on.
And it may be negligent. I mean, you're talking. So what? Whether they benefit, they could have benefited 2%. So what? That doesn't
hold on, Jamar. Hold on, because Mike says speak. Mike, Jamar asked a question earlier when you were cut off, so I want you to ask it. What is the percentage of these countries' defense bill that is relieved due to our intervention? Are you saying they don't have to pay for defense at all? Like they don't have a military period?
They do have military, all of them.
What's called littoral defense, basically out to the 12-mile border, the 12-mile international limit into the oceans around them. Tactical defense, localized defense, that kind of stuff. They all have to pay for that. They protect their borders. But the fact that our umbrella of defense stretches beyond our borders and it circles Western Europe provides them that overlapping umbrella of strategic defense.
Okay, how much of their budget in a percentile is that saving them?
What the percentage differences were.
Say again?
I'd do some research and find out, what the difference between.
So you're just spitballing. You're just spitballing. You're just spitballing. I think contextually that it may save the money.
Countries don't need to worry about their strategic defense.
Well, Mike,
because we do it.
if
But I'm asking you something very specific. What is
Mike,
the number?
if it accounted for like a 45% savings, I'd say, well, that's it. Case closed.
Well,
Jamal's
you're talking about 45% savings. You're just saying that's the difference between 2% of their gross GDP and 2.5% of their gross GDP. You know, it was probably something. It was probably if they spend 3% of GDP on defense, they probably would have had to spend 6 or 8 if they had.
Let me ask you. Wait. And here's another question. Let me ask you one more question. What about the countries that are not covered under that? How do they do it? I mean, United States is ranked like 30th with regards to healthcare. All of those countries are not in NATO. So how do the other countries that are not part of NATO handle their healthcare? Since they're not under that particular strategic umbrella that you're talking about, they have to pay for healthcare. They have to pay for defense. How do they do it?
There's more than just NATO. There's Japan. There's Taiwan. There's Australia. There's pretty much a lot of Southeast Asia. That's Philippines.
The world.
A lot of other countries that we protect strategically that could have been gobbled up by an expansionist Soviet Union.
That's not what he's asking, though. He's saying that there are socialist states or social whatever we want to call them that are not protected under our military umbrella. So their GDP has to account for that.
Are we talking about socialist states or are we talking about democratic socialism with social programs?
Either one, I don't care. But I mean,
socialist states, the people that want to have a choice, the authoritarian state tells them how much of their income they're going to lose, and it could be 70, 80%. Their labor is owned by the state, and so we're not talking about socialist states. We're talking about democratic socialist states.
Yeah, but that's not the question. The question is, your initial argument was, yes, these European states are able to handle, socializing medicine and education because they're not spending their GDP on military. Fine. But we don't know the percentage of savings for that to see how significant that is. But B, yeah, I think that's a compelling argument if we can look at the numbers. But B, what about those socialist states who are not covered under NATO that are still doing that? How are they affording it?
Name what are these very successful democratic socialist states that aren't covered by our defense?
Jamar, go for it.
Fair enough. I don't know the democratic socialist states, but let me say it this way. I think the argument to some degree is if your country wants to provide healthcare for its people, your country can provide healthcare for its people. And if your argument is, why can't they? And your argument is, well, there's not enough money to do it. That gets a little weird. And I don't think that argument is necessarily true. But I still want to know how much, I'm curious about that. How much money do you believe that these countries need to devote to healthcare? Like for the United States, how much money do you think it takes the United States? Like, so let's take them out for the moment. Let's talk about the United States. Because wait, we don't live there. Let's talk about here.
Okay.
So we spend $1 trillion a year on the military.
Everybody stop. Jamar asked a question, and I think it's really pertinent. Mike, how much money would it take to universalize medicine in America?
Wait,
the way that I would look at it is, how much does the tax rate need to go up to afford that? Is the way I would look at that.
So, but
fine. Hold on, Jamar. Hold on. Okay, Mike, answer that question. How much do you say the tax rate would go up in order to universalize medicine in the United States?
50%, 60%. I mean, it would go to a 50% tax rate. We have to give half our money to the state.
Okay, Mark, go ahead. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I just wanted to know, did the last point, it didn't go anywhere because nobody had facts on either side?
What was the last point?
The last point about all the money that's being spent on, like, our military spends so much and we're covering so many other areas to help protect other areas that then it enables those areas to be able to put out free healthcare because they don't have to put out so much money for military. Right. But then that point became nothing because neither one of them had the information.
Mike didn't have the information as to how much they were saving, and Jamar didn't have the information as to which countries outside of NATO were successfully running a socialist state. Right. So we're pretty much at a stalemate.
So then that point's gone.
Well, it's not. Well, when we have a part 2, I'm sure they're both going to have that.
Just so we're clear, though.
Yeah, I know.
I thought it was twice as much on healthcare as anywhere else in the world. That's not an issue of us using healthcare more. That's an issue of us paying more for healthcare.
Wait, say that.
The argument would,
Say that point that you just made again.
We spend twice as much for healthcare as anywhere else in the world. That is not us using healthcare more. That is them charging us more. I don't understand this argument against paying less for healthcare.
Well, his argument is he's saying that in order for everyone to be covered, we'd have to be charged at least 50 to 60% tax. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. So let me ask you this: for the standpoint of drug companies, how about having Medicare negotiate for drug prices? Would that or would that not lower drug costs? That answer is yes. Now, is that increasing?
Mike, do you agree with that?
Oh, that drug cost should be reined in.
If
Yeah.
Medicare negotiated the drug prices, wouldn't that decrease drug costs significantly?
Right. I agree with that.
Okay, go ahead, Jamar.
So right off the bat, that's a decrease in the amount of healthcare costs, correct?
Mhm.
Is that increasing the tax rate 50%? True or false?
True, and I agree with that. I agree that there's a lot can be done to lower.
So there are things that can be done that can increase the cost of healthcare without necessarily raising the tax rate to 50%. That's true, right?
Okay. Can I ask a question about when you talk about universal health care, are you saying people that already have great plans, like all these great private plans that are paid for by employers, all have to go away and we all just have to go to this universal system? Or are we only talking about people that don't have health insurance?
Honestly, if it's up, it depends on who you're talking to. If it's up to me, yeah, I don't think those systems should exist. I think those things are essentially you have private enterprise doing something that Medicare can do for cheaper. It's just leeches within the system itself. I don't necessarily know if Sanders goes that far. I would go that far, and I would even defend.
You want to eliminate all private health care?
Yes, personally, me, yes, I would.
So if I'm a millionaire and I want badass coverage because I can afford it, I won't be able to have that under the Jamar L Thomas plan.
Under the Jamar Thomas plan, no. I'm hardcore on this particular point. That said, I don't think Sanders goes that far. I mean, I would have a hard time believing that they would go to that extent of getting rid of it. I think their plan is Medicare for all. Medicare is available for anybody that wants healthcare.
Okay, now
Mike, you can't afford it, you have access to it.
Mike, I want to challenge you. Now, I know I said I was going to have Mike off, but I think Jamar brought up a really, really, really good argument. Mike, you said it was going to be at 50% if we universalize medicine, but then you
following it, so I'd have to do some research onto that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get like a 0.0%.
I do know that places like Finland and Sweden all have rates in the 60s.
Well, hold on for a second, because we're talking about America now, because
I understand.
We went outside the borders and we don't have the numbers, and that's okay. But what I want to ask you is, when you gave us that 50% number, were you factoring in dramatically reducing the ridiculous costs of medicine on the side of the pharmaceutical companies? Were you factoring that in when you said 50%?
No, probably not. I was going with just what the total cost of healthcare is currently. Yeah, so if the cost can be dramatically decreased and that Medicare can say MRIs are no longer going to be $1,800, they're going to be $500, and just make that.
Yes, but by the way, my argument here is not that everything in healthcare stays exactly the same as is going forward, and we can look. That's not my argument. My argument is that we pay twice as much as everyone else for healthcare, and that we need to bring the cost of healthcare down. That's my argument. Now, my argument goes into how do we do that?
Now, hold on, Jamar, Mike, hold on. Princess Sori has something to say, and I think it's actually a very, very salient point. So you have the floor.
We went to the pharmacy today, and we don't have insurance right now, so they
said, they're gonna eat you alive because they can charge you as much as they want to.
I told the guy that we don't have insurance, and then he knocked the price down by 75% for us.
Oh wow!
White and very pretty. Go ahead.
You had it lucky. When I ran out of healthcare, I think this was during the time I was in New York, and I needed medication for transplant medication. It was medication that would allow rejection of drugs, to prevent the rejection of drugs. And at that point, if you don't have healthcare, you're screwed. That medication costs like $300-400 a month. Some brands, other brands was $1,200, depending upon the brand that you were trying to get or needed to get. I mean, look, if you're asking me in the beginning, you started this conversation with, is capitalism moral? That's the question you asked me. And I said, no. And I said, if your goal means morality means humanity means more, then an argument about whether or not we should provide healthcare for our citizens. And the answer becomes, we can't afford to. Yes. Will we is a different question and a different conversation. Now, if the conversation is, did countries gain a little bit, meaning could pay less to defense because of the United States? I would imagine so, that, yeah, they could pay less to defense. Is it something that the United States wanted? Yes, the United States did. And it's up to the United States to do that. It's not the fault of those other countries. Could the United States reposition the money that it's paying for the military? Because let's be honest, do we honestly believe that there's anything trying to attack our shores? The answer is no. There's nothing trying to attack our shores. We spend $1 trillion around the world for the same reason that Britain spent all that money when it was master of the universe around the world. And for the same reason that Rome spent all of that money and resources when it was master of the universe around the world. These guys are imperialist countries. So yes, we can afford to pay for healthcare if we want to pay for healthcare. The question is, how do you do it? One of the ways is you cut costs first, but you used to do it. That's what it boils down to.
Okay, now
it's not a question of if we can do it. It's a question of whether or not we do it.
Now, Mike, I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
Do you think it's moral? I forgot what the situation was like. It was 2-3 years ago. There was like this one pill that cost like $5 to make, and then the guy charged like 20 grand a pill or something. I don't know, Jamar, if you remember that.
I remember, yeah. It was a pill that he knew he had the market share on. People couldn't get the pill, so he was the one that was the producer of the pill. And like a good capitalist, he says, this is a product that other people need, so I'm going to increase the price of the product. And people got pissed at him. And he was like, how dare you get pissed at me?
Now, hold on, Jamar. Mike, isn't
a good capitalist?
Isn't that pure capitalism, Mike?
Yes.
Well, let's go. You got to go into what it costs to research this. The first pill cost several billion.
They were selling it for $5 at first.
After that, the
wait, stop here.
Hold on, Mike.
It for a different price.
Mike,
they were selling it for a different price, and they increased the price when they realized they could get more money for it.
Mike.
Sure, I understand.
Is that moral?
Was the guy scummy? The guy was scummy. Absolutely.
So so you're saying that's immoral then?
Well, what I'm saying is that his company would pay the price for being that scummy, and people would sell stocks, and people wouldn't want to do business with their Granted, the people that need that pill, yeah, they're
Scummy is a moral declaration, though, isn't it?
Oh, I'm not. I'm a capitalist myself, but I can sure say that there are capitalist scumbags out there that try to milk the system for everything it's worth.
Well, hold on. I just want. Are you agreeing with me that when you say scummy, that you're saying that means it's immoral?
If they were charging so much more than what they really needed to do to recoup their investment, and then have a reasonable profit, if they were truly charging so much exponentially more, then yeah, that's scummy. Okay. Well,
I just want you to agree with me that scummy means immoral. Why are you dodging me, Mike?
Well, yeah, that's immoral.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that capitalism as a whole is immoral.
No, I didn't say capitalism as a whole is immoral. That was Jamar. But what I'm saying is that application of capitalism makes that guy an immoral son of a bitch. Now, that being said, you agree that these pharmaceutical companies are and the quid pro quo and the symbiotic relationship that they have with insurance companies. You agree that that's fucking up our economy. Do you agree with that?
I guess I have to look into it more. But yeah, I can see how it could.
Well, I mean, there's a reason that an MRI costs $1,800 instead of the $200 that it should cost, right?
Let's get to brass tacks. Does he agree that within the insurance company we're being charged twice as much as it needs to be cost for costs as we pay anywhere else around the world? That's somewhat of a flat fact. We pay twice as much as anywhere else around the globe. That's good capitalism, right?
But I guess what it comes to, for me, what it comes down to is how much do I want the government involved with setting those prices? For me, being an individualist who and not a collectivist, I'm more about individuals, taking care of individuals, and if people in charity, and if people need help, that you take care of them. But everybody doesn't need the same amount of help, and I just
Nobody said everybody needs the same amount of help. We were talking about healthcare, but it does give this idea on your disposition. I mean, you're bringing up this thing of other countries using militarism. That's just a dodge, right? You just don't want to pay for healthcare.
All right, now hold on for a second, Mike. I know I promised I'd let you go, but I lied again.
Wait. I mean,
Jamal,
let's be
hold
very
on.
clear about our positions. Saying I'm an individualist and making the argument about we're talking about healthcare and you talk about military. That's just the dodge. That has nothing to do with the conversation. That's just something he's using because he doesn't want to deal with the issue of healthcare.
Universal healthcare is unaffordable.
No, hold on. I don't think the military thing is a dodge per se, but I am
He doesn't
glad
care
that
about it. It's just something that he uses. That's my point. It's something
I'm
that's
glad he went down to the individualist thing because he knows that I've said many times that I'm more of a collectivist than an individualist, and I'm trying to find a way to marry those because there's got to be a way. But hold on, now Jamar, you posited a very, very good argument about lower, taking these pharmaceuticals to task and dealing with the insurance companies. How much average taxes would let's say in your dream world, how much would an average Joe like you and I pay in taxes? How much would it increase to in your economic system?
I don't know how to answer that. You got to understand, to me, taxes are to the level of what your society needs to do. It's X amount. It's what do your society need and what is your society trying to accomplish? I don't know how to answer that number. That's not a number where you can say, taxes go to X. In fact, I don't even know if any of these guys have made that argument. In fact, I don't know if you even need to raise taxes on the bottom portion of the economic distribution ladder. I mean, you're talking about a situation where the overwhelming majority of the gains for the last 40, 50 years have gone to the top 1%. So I would argue to you that before you're talking about touching anything on the bottom level of the economic distribution scale, you start looking there for your gains.
Well, hold on. You said when Mike said that it would go to 50 to 60, you said no, that's not true.
Yeah, I don't.
So that means that you do have a number in your head somewhere, right?
Well, there's a difference in taxation rates. I mean, the taxation rate for somebody who's making $20,000 a year is different than the taxation rate for somebody who's making, $1 billion.
Right. I'm talking about median average though, because that was Mike's answer. The median average was going to go up 50% to 50%. What's yours?
I don't know what the number is. Like I can't give that number.
Below 50% is what you're saying.
No, the number doesn't make sense in political terms. It depends on who you're talking to. If you're saying, for example, the amount that people pay in taxes right now for income based off of capital gains, I think is 15%. The amount that somebody pays if they're, let's say, running a small business, I think is what, 30, 40% or 30 something percent. Saying that somebody is paying a tax rate of 50% from a tax rate of 30 something percent, it depends on the gains. You may say everything that's over $1 million gets taxed at 50%. But that's a little bit different than saying the median tax rate is 50%. Does that make sense? It's not the same. The tax rate is progressive. We have a progressive tax rate. It depends upon the income distribution scale.
Okay.
I hope that's clear. It's not saying the median tax rate is 50% doesn't really mean anything.
The only thing that made me really, really nervous about Bernie was when Hillary was in the debates, when she was pressing him to justify his numbers in the books. He was never ultimately clear as to what the numbers were going to be. And it looks like we're in a similar situation, and that makes me nervous.
Well, your tax rate is different than the tax rate of somebody else who's getting paid $1 million a year. Is that fair? I don't mean fair from the standpoint of is it like morally fair? I mean, I'm saying, is it fair at the end of the sentence, not as a thing itself? I'm making a point that
$1 million, I don't have a problem with paying $500K in taxes. I know, Elio, Mike, you're having a heart attack right now.
Well, I don't mean fairness in the fairness.
I don't mind paying $500K in taxes.
No, I'm saying right now there's a progressive income tax that, for example, you may pay if let's say you're playing the stock market, you were bringing in $1 billion. Someone may say anything over $1 billion. 50, 70, or 70% goes in taxes. Well, me saying the median tax rate is 50% doesn't really mean anything in that context. The tax rate is going to be different depending upon how much money you make and how much you bring in. Sanders, in his plan, the way he was talking about paying for it was taxing the incomes of the top richest. I mean, he wasn't talking about hitting everybody on the income distribution scale the same. His argument is that people at the top have done magnificently well. And over the last 30 years, 40, 50 years since the 1980s, your amount of money that you bring in is stagnated. It hasn't gone anywhere. If you're talking about income in real terms, but the incomes of the top 1% has gone through the roof. We're at an income inequality level of pharaohs. So it's not the same thing. For Bernie Sanders to say a 50% tax, that doesn't mean anything. We're not talking about where everybody is taxed the same. Taxes work differently depending upon how much money that you're bringing in. Does that make sense?
Well, of course, there's a progressive tax rate. I mean, I understand that.
Right. I guess I'm making the point that me saying 50% going, it doesn't mean anything. I can't. If you're asking me, what is that number? Well, that number looks different depending upon how much you bring in on an income on an income scale.
I was just talking about like the average Joe, average income people.
That's why I said median income, Jamar.
So 30,000 a year.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. It may not go up at all. It depends on how he's talking about paying for it. This is what I'm saying. If Sanders is making the argument that this is being paid for at the upper income of the distribution scale, meaning people who are bringing in, let's say, over $1 million a year, then the people at the bottom end of the scale may find that they have more money in total than what they would have without it, especially seeing as, for the most part, we're paying more for healthcare anyway. That's the point I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
We're not equal in this.
Jamar, let me ask Mike one question, and then Mike, you got to go, and then hopefully Majestic Demon Lord can call in, because
Yeah, he's probably ready now.
MJD, I would have you know, Jamar, studied economics, so you're not going to be able to pull the wool over his eyes with your fedora. Elio, Mike, you argued very well, my brother. I appreciate you. I know you're going to have those numbers the next time we have this discussion. Let me ask one point. Let me ask you this one question, Mike. If we were able to get a handle around these sons of bitches in the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies, and let's say that the quote unquote fantasy world that Jamal just talked about, where we're only increasing taxes for the rich 1%, who basically ingested 95% of the capital last year.
Well, wait, I think it's, well, okay, go ahead. I think I did say that. Go ahead. You're fine.
Okay. So let's just say that actually happened, and we were able to cover literally every single American's healthcare. And not everybody's going to need radical healthcare, so
Right.
you can kind of recycle that and grow the pot over the years, right, Mike? Would you agree with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Just for this hypothetical, yeah.
Yes, for this hypothetical, would you be in favor of that?
Not if it gets rid of people with decent careers that have private insurance, because I believe that if a person's successful and they have a good job, they've got good benefits, they should be rewarded with really good health care that provides them with extra benefits or whatever. I don't think that there's any right to take away those private policies.
I agree with that. I don't really see the win, Jamar, in taking away private policies. But let's say you had the private policy, and let's say you had the Vin plan. Would you be good with that?
If people aren't insured and they need help, then I have no problem with people that are at the bottom scales that are falling through the cracks getting some kind of system.
Oh,
okay.
we have common ground.
We have commonality.
Common ground. Good.
Oh, wow, I said that.
All right. I love you, Elio, Mike. I'm gonna leave the door open for MJD to call in.
I'll take the common ground. Fair enough. I'll take the common ground.
All right, later, guys.
Later,
Bye.
man. Love you, brother.
That's all I want. If he's willing to come and say, look, I like I said, I don't care. I don't need extremeness in my part. I just want people covered for healthcare. That's my only intention. I come from this from a humanistic standpoint. I don't care about whether or not if what I consider to be extreme takes place. If it's Medicare for all, and if I get people who say, look, I want to keep my healthcare plan, but at the very least, let's have something for people who need it. I'm okay with Medicare for all. I'll take it.
Okay.
I'll take it.
Now, capitalism has also brought us super chat.
Yes, that's true. That part is true. That part is true.
Anthony's asking if you raise
30% of your super chat, by the way. That's what I'm saying. That's absolutely true.
If you raise taxes on the rich and increase minimum wages, isn't it going to kill the rich and businesses as a whole? Who will keep the lights on then?
Would Jeff Bezos have done what Jeff Bezos did for maybe $60 billion as opposed to $150 billion?
What do you mean by that?
Would Jeff Bezos have done, like, I would almost guarantee you that Amazon would still exist if Jeff Bezos had 60 billion as opposed to 150 billion. It's not going to kill incentive. What kills incentive more? You having a job that you hate, barely making ends meet, and if you worked at McDonald's, how enthused are you to work at McDonald's and drop French fries? Is that what you go for in your daily life? Or I guess I'm thinking from the position of the capitalists, I understand they make that argument, but what about everyone else who's in a job that they hate, just barely making ends meet? What is the incentive and drive for those people to get out of bed in the morning? Those people are literally being compelled to a job based on, if you don't eat, you're not going to be able to eat. You're not going to be able to have a house if you don't do X. Not because they want to do it, not because they love to do it. They're being compelled to do it. You're looking at all this mental health stuff that's going on in the society, and people wonder, why are these people all of a sudden mentally ill? I pose to you that the incentives that you're talking about, for whatever reason, no one ever takes the incentives for everyone else who are doing these jobs into account. They only take the incentives of the capitalists into account. You have other people in your society as opposed to the people who are, let's say, creating a business. I suggest you also pay attention to the needs of the majority of the people of your society. As a second point, Jeff Bezos would have done exactly what Jeff Bezos did now if Jeff Bezos made half of the money Jeff Bezos made.
Okay. So yeah, I agree with that. I think definitely Amazon prices would go up for sure. And I think Bezos would probably come up with some Jetson invention to mechanize 30% of his staff so that he doesn't have to pay.
Also, think about how much more money people would have to spend on nonsense and junk if those people actually made more.
Right.
Yeah. And by the way, just because the minimum wage goes up, it depends. It's not an infinite number. The minimum wage can't go beyond the from a capitalist perspective in regards to the, clearly from a logic perspective, the minimum wage can't go up larger than what the company can bear. So I'm not talking about insanity. Are you selling a product that costs $1 for $20?
Now, I tell you, Jamar, that I personally saw people get screwed. I'm talking about low wage workers get screwed on hours once the minimum wage went up in Maine.
Yep.
That's a fact. I've met these people.
Watch them get screwed in hours. What do you mean?
Well, go ahead.
Because minimum wage went up, then their boss cut their hours because they.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Mom and pop store. And this girl was actually on the way to being a manager and all that jazz. And then minimum wage hit and minimum wage increased. So her hours got cut and all the rest of that jazz. And she's pretty much stuck now.
Yep.
The reason why I make this argument that a lot of this stuff becomes systemic is because it is in the interest of the owner to do that, which sucks. Like understand what I mean by that. The owner could be the nicest person on the planet, but if the owner wants to make a certain amount, the owner is going to do something that's going to hurt the workers, because from the standpoint of the owners, he needs to make more money. And in their case, they did what they needed to do in order to kind of tweak themselves around the rule in order to get by.
Well, they had to stay afloat, Jamar, because it wasn't because she was a nasty capitalist.
But that's my point. That's kind of my point. That's kind of my point. From the standpoint of them, we need to, I want to say somewhat at the margins in regards to the system itself. But you would agree with me that that's also more money that some people are getting that's going into their pockets. Like there may have been purposely people where they cut their hours, but there are also people who are now making more money to get by. Like that's more money that's being injected into society itself because there's more people who have more money in their pockets. Is that true?
Yeah, I agree. Leah just said there's 4 million people less on welfare since Trump. Well, what happened to those people? They all have jobs now? Hold on. Okay, James, are you on the line?
You gotta put it on speaker.
I'm on the line.
Okay, now James, give us a little bit. James is going to be our last caller because MJD won't call. He won't call me.
Oh.
James, tell us a little bit about your background and why you're relevant to this discussion.
I'll give you a very simple feedback from being user of the both systems. I lived in Europe for over 30 years, and I've been living in the States for almost 20. And I have a pretty extensive experience with both healthcare systems, and I know enough how it's tied to the economy of and how it's run by the government. So having used medical assistance extensively in Europe and to some extent in the US, I can easily compare what are you getting here and versus what you're getting in Europe. And I can give you some numbers.
Yeah, go for it.
What it costs the governments to run those systems.
Go for it, please.
Well, you raised the question first, how much it costs the European governments to provide universal health care? Well, on average, it's anywhere between 9 to 15% addition to the tax of the average citizen. So if you look at what Americans spend on healthcare, let's say the average income is roughly around 45, 50 grand. Proportionally, that percentage is definitely much higher than 9 to 15%. And if you factor in copays and deductibles, then those numbers are going to go through the roof.
Sanders' plan doesn't factor in, doesn't have copays. There's nothing at the point of payment.
Which is great,
Nor is there anything at the point of payment in Europe.
Timo, on top of that, for the 9 to 15% tax deduction, you're getting a Cadillac plan. So you don't have to worry about your private insurance that some people get through their employers and that provide all these great services, because all those are already provided in through European systems. So you don't have to worry about the quality of your health care or of your insurance because you're getting the top quality to begin with. So that's why there's not really a demand for private insurance or private sector, because the government, quote unquote, or universal sector provides more than enough to begin with. And that's why the universal sector covers 80 to 90% of all medical services for 90 to 95% of the population.
So you're saying that the European way of doing it and the way that Jamar has been proposing wouldn't kill us economically over here in America?
Absolutely not. I mean, you guys have a problem with insurance companies and pharma companies being at the liberty of hiking the prices up to the wazoo.
What about wait times though in Europe?
What about what?
What about wait times?
I have to wait to see my doctor, by the way.
Isn't
you had to get surgery tomorrow? Would you do it?
You're first of all, there are wait times in the U.S.
Yeah, that's what I was telling you. If I needed to go see my doctor, I'm not going to be able to see him tomorrow. I have to see him within a few days.
If you have non-life-threatening surgery, they're not going to put you on a table next day. They're going to put you on a table when it fits their schedule. It's basically the same thing in Europe. If you have a life-threatening condition, you get the care you need. If you have a non-life-threatening condition, you get in the line, just like everybody else in the United States. It's the same story.
And by the way, if you got hit by a bus in Europe, they'll take you immediately to surgery.
Oh yeah, I mean, they don't distinguish between emergency versus regular services. I mean, there's no such thing as paying for ambulances. There's no such thing as getting extra bills from ERs versus from hospital. There's no such thing as getting bills for hospitalization.
No, what I mean is sometimes right-wingers in this country make the argument about wait times. And I'm saying, if anything happened to you in an emergency, they would take you to surgery immediately. It's not, oh my God, we have to put you on the waiting list. I'm saying he's...
Sure. I mean, I was making that point. I was saying with life-threatening conditions, nobody's going to turn down a patient. But if it's a non-life-threatening condition, then just like in this country, which I have experience with, because I was at the time in need of a knee surgery, it was scheduled 3 or 4 months out. That was the earliest they could take me.
Okay, so I'm just going to read something.
Perpetuating by the quote unquote capitalists and libertarians or whatever, but they don't only have their numbers in the pocket.
Okay. Nexus. Wait, what? If you get hit by a bus in US, they won't help you if you don't have healthcare insurance? Yes, they'll help you, and then they'll charge your family to the 5th generation. Nexus.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yep.
Nobody's saying that the capitalists are going to let you die in the street.
They're saying they're going to charge her $1 million to fix your,
The hell out of you after
Right.
they take care of you.
Right.
What the hell?
And what they bring to attention, I just read an article earlier this week about a teacher from Texas who has this Cadillac plan through his school, and who experienced a heart attack, a widowmaker type, and his neighbor trying to help called an ambulance for him, and they took him to a hospital that was out of his network, and now they saved him, and now he's stuck with a bill of $160,000. So what did he have that Cadillac plan for? For nothing.
So because he went to a hospital that wasn't covered in his Cadillac plan that he's paying trillions of dollars for, he's screwed two ways, right? Because he's still paying for his Cadillac plan, but
exactly,
yeah,
and he was obviously he was in no condition while going through the heart attack to tell whomever was trying to help him and call the ambulance and notify the medical professionals. He was in no condition to tell them, oh, you can't tell me to this particular hospital. You got to tell me to the other one because that's where my insurance was going to cover me.
All right, James.
So if you have to make these kind of choices at these kind of situations, and then you end up with $150,000 bill, then what is your Cadillac plan good for?
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, James. It was enlightening for sure. Thank you for calling up. I think Jamar is in complete agreement with you, and I think
fully agree. Look, there's one thing I want to say something. The friend that you mentioned that they people who I understand in small mom and pop shops, and anytime somebody increases the minimum wage or something to that effect, there are adjustments that need to be made, but understand why they're talking about increasing a minimum wage or something to that effect. And it is at the end of the day, the choice of the person who runs the company to make those changes that screw over the workers in that company. I don't understand how that adversely, how that's the fault of everyone else. That said, you are putting more money into the economy itself. So yeah, there are, in any change that's made, in a sweeping change, there are going to be changes. But that said, there are positive benefits that come from it. And the whole point of increasing the minimum wage is for the positive benefits. It is the owner that is making those changes that adversely affects the workers in that case. I hope that makes sense, but I may be.
For sure. James, did you say you had a final point to make?
Well, I wanted to make one extra point, which the libertarian guy was trying to make, or speculatively, which was that the Americans or the Europeans can afford the healthcare system because they don't have to spend as much on the defense. Well, that's total bullshit, obviously, because he doesn't know his stuff. First of all, the Americans turned European continents into a wreck, into ruins, with their unnecessary bombings of half of Europe. So Europeans had to spend a lot of money on rebuilding pretty much half of the continent. How they do it? They did it mainly through a Marshall Plan, if you're familiar with that, with the loan which was provided by the U.S. government and which the Europeans had to pay back. Secondly, every European government that's part of NATO and every European government that has U.S. base on its territory pays money to the U.S. government for their presence. So it's not a freebie for the Europeans to have Americans in their territory. Thirdly, every European government has its own army. So every European government spends money on military. On average, between 1 to 2.5% of their GDP, which is what they're required by the NATO treaty. So Europeans are not freeloading on anybody or off of anybody in order to fund their healthcare systems. They're just much more efficient in running it. That's about it.
Awesome. Very cogent argument.
Very good point.
When Elio Mike gets back on, he's got some splaining to do.
Very good point.
But
That's a damn good
really
point.
good point. See, I tell you, Jamar, I got the best audience in the world, man.
Good point. I love that point.
They don't play around. They don't play games around here. Okay. Majestic Demon Lord, please call me. That was great. Elio Mike. Whoo! You better come with your numbers next time, my guy. He was not playing.
Keep in mind, he's a right winger. Like, he's in this kind of individualist camp. They just come up with arguments for it. It's not, I think these guys are paying for healthcare because it's like, but how do you know that? Well, I mean, I don't really know that. I'm just pushing this out there as an argument. But yeah, but how do you know that? Why do you think that?
Okay, now you're about to deal with the smartest person in the
Sorry, I'm trying to get the chat up on my phone so I can practically.
You're about to deal with the smartest person in the world right now. We have the Majestic Demon Lord on the line, straight from Europe. MJD.
Yo, what's up, sir?
I don't know why I keep calling you MJD.
The audio's probably going to be a bit crap, so can everyone hear me fine?
We can hear you fine. Go for it, brother.
Uh-oh. We can hear you fine. Where you from, my man?
Right. Okay, so let's just back up the bus. Jamal has made a few comments that really rankle me.
Uh-oh. Yeah, rankle him.
Let's start with the first one when you were saying that taxation should be whatever society needs. Who decides what society needs and how?
Okay. But you want me to define needs? The needs of a society are determined by the society. Otherwise, you don't have a democracy. You have something else.
Okay. But there is a government, needs to be some form of structure that implements those needs, correct? That spends the money, that accounts to the populace where that money is spent.
That is true, yes.
Okay. So, what if the needs as judged by those in power, the cost of it exceeds what the populace can pay? That's happened a few times in recent history. There's been a number of countries that have bankrupted themselves. Greece quite famously bankrupted themselves, I think, 5 times. So how do you make sure that that doesn't happen?
Be specific.
He just said Greece.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know what he's asking me. You're saying, how do you determine whether a country is bankrupting itself? I don't know what you're asking me.
My question is, if what needs to be spent as determined by the country costs more than the country can afford to pay, how do you balance that problem?
Well, a country is always going to have some level of a ledger. I mean, again, I don't quite understand your question. A government spends based on the needs of the society. The society determines what those needs are based on some level of priority. But it's the country itself that makes those determinations. I don't know what you're asking me beyond that point.
Okay, let me put it a more realistic way. You've advocated for universal healthcare and universal education, particularly tertiary education. Is that correct?
That's true. Yes.
Okay, so what if those things to provide cost more than the country can afford to pay?
Is that our situation?
No, this is my question.
No, I'm asking you. You're talking about a hypothetical. I'm talking about reality. Is that our situation? You're talking about some fantasy world. I'm talking about the real world that we live in right now. Is that the situation to which we find ourselves? Do you believe that healthcare and education is impossible in the current scenario that we have in the United States?
Country in the last 100 years.
Answer my question.
Hold on, Jamar. I'm gonna stop this. Majestic, I need you to answer Jamal's direct question. Is the United States of America in the situation that you just hypothesized?
No.
Then why are you asking me the question?
Because there is a broader point that I want.
It's not a broader point. We're having a conversation about healthcare, and we're having a conversation about education. You brought up education, and you're bringing this fantasy conversation about, in some fantasy world, about some country like Greece and whether or not it could pay for it. I'm talking about real world politics in which we have real human beings who actually need access to healthcare, where we have 20 million or so people who don't have healthcare, in real world scenario, people don't have education. You're telling me about some fantasy world of a country that can't afford their means. That's not where we are.
No. Because your line of logic is that healthcare is moral.
Yes.
Therefore, we must provide healthcare. And that whatever the cost of that healthcare, the country must pay for it in the form of taxation. And I'm saying...
My argument is that the United States has a capacity to make sure that everyone in this country have access to healthcare and education. That's my argument.
Simple argument. Because what happens in every time that policies like this get enacted is what you find is something that I think it was David Copperfield, which is expenditure always rises to meet income. What people determine as a need one day gets transmuted to a right. What people refer to as a want one day gets transmuted to a need. For a real world example in the country that I live in, currently the government is looking at making sure that home insulation, which if you go 30 years ago was considered a privilege, is now a right for rental homes. Now that has very direct real world consequences of increasing the cost of rent, and particularly the cost of rent for those in the lowest income bracket. So the principle that I want you to expand upon is, how do you decide? Because what inevitably happens in every case that we have in economic history is that you start off with a number of reasonable presuppositions. And for the record, I support nationalized healthcare, but I don't think it's a right. But people keep adding to this list of what they perceive to be needs and rights, and it grows ever and ever bigger. And what happens is the country ends up going bankrupt.
But just so we're very clear right now, just because I want to hammer this home and I want to put a pin in this, you agree that that's not the situation to which we are in the United States?
Yeah, but what you have failed to articulate in Elio, Mike, and the other gentleman's call.
No, before I move. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Make your point. I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
Yeah, no. I said what you stated these lofty goals, some of which I agree with, but you haven't actually said how we differentiate on a moral basis between things that are good to have and things that will in the future be considered needs and then possibly even considered rights.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, I understand what you mean. You're the politicization. Jesus Christ, can't say it. Politicization of morality in that sense. Like, how do you determine what's moral versus what's nice to have? Look, I understand where you're coming from with this. I would make the point from a humanitarian standpoint. If things are affecting us as human beings and our capacity to live in our society, that's to some degree is moral. I mean, I would argue that healthcare is moral. Like, you're talking about the physicality of a person and that person feeling pain and injury and so forth. I think that gets to a certain degree of morality.
Mar, let me jump in here and throw a dynamite stick into this entire thing.
Go for it.
So you know me, I'm a Christian.
Yes.
MDL and I have had jihad after jihad over abortion, right? I believe abortion is the willful killing of an innocent Homo sapien.
Okay. What do I believe?
Are you well? Hold on. Are you going to put that into your healthcare plan that I have to subsidize?
Oh, I see what you mean. God, I don't know. That's look, for me. That's one of those things where, for me, I don't have that belief. I think that's a religious belief. That's between you and your God on this case. But I think you would probably make the case of, I don't do it. But I think you would probably say is, I don't want to have to pay for that. That's not, yeah, this might be my God, but this is indeed my God. And because of that, I don't necessarily want to pay for it. Look, if the difference between me getting Medicare for all pass was abortion, then no. Like, I would imagine some lefties would hate me to say that. But if the difference between 20-something million people getting healthcare is abortion, I don't have this belief, yes, people should get abortions. No, I wouldn't necessarily make people, make it the difference between 20 or 30 million people getting healthcare.
Majestic.
If you're asking me, look, I don't like this religious belief being espoused into politics. But whether I like it or not, there are going to be other people who are going to be against me on this, including you, if it's included into any kind of Medicare for all plan.
I don't think it's only a religious belief, because there are people that are not religious that have that belief that humans have, like just how you're saying, like with the healthcare, they're all like give healthcare to everybody. Like
Yes.
we don't limit that to the people that are outside the womb. We say they're all people, so we're going to give healthcare to all of them. So we're not going to kill any of them.
Well, Jamar, it's not a religious belief that we're killing a Homo sapien. That's science.
It is. It's a fetus. No, that's not science. That's what you're considering science. That's not
Okay,
science.
Jamar, I could name me one doctor who will disagree that we're killing a Homo sapien in utero.
You are killing something that is not a human being.
No,
It's not a human being.
no. I need you to name me a doctor, because I got sources on this. Just like we were challenging Elio Mike, I'm going to challenge you now.
I don't have sources on me about whether or not you're killing a human being.
Okay, Jamar, this is not debatable to embryologists that we're killing a human.
Okay.
What?
I feel okay. I don't have sources on me because I didn't realize I was going to have a conversation about abortion. But this
here's
is
what I'm saying. I'm not
your
saying,
belief, not mine. That's all I'm saying.
No, here's what I'm saying. The science, there's no dispute scientifically that we're killing a Homo sapien. The question is it moral? Is it moral to kill certain types of Homo sapiens? And that's where the philosophy and the religion comes in, because it's the religion that says, well, you shouldn't kill Homo sapiens. That's a
I don't
religion.
think you should kill Homo sapiens either.
Well, there's some Homo sapiens that you're okay.
Well, I understand you're saying it that way, but okay, fair enough.
But
we can.
Majestic, is this part of your argument? Like, this is not this simple? It's not as simple as saying, do what's morally right?
Well,
Does this demonstrate that what Jamar is saying as oh, it's as simple. We all know what morality is as far as healthcare.
No, I never said that. I never said that at all. If you're asking me whether or not I think healthcare is moral, yes, I think healthcare is moral. If you're asking me whether I think morality is simple, no, I don't think morality exists. In if we're being honest, that's a human conception.
morality exists.
Like, why are you a Christian?
Well, hold on. Oh, Majestic has something to say. Go ahead, Majestic.
Wait. Answer that. You answer that. Why are you a Christian?
Huh?
Why are you a Christian?
I don't believe in morals. That's you can't make that argument.
Well, hold on, Majestic.
No. Again,
Hold
let
on.
me be very specific in what I mean by that.
We're all talking here. Give me a second. I'm hosting the show. I got to pull in the reins. I got to pull the card. Okay, now, Majestic, say what you just said.
Well, okay, so Jamal earlier has made multiple statements that healthcare is moral.
Yes.
And then he said, I don't believe in morality, or words to that effect.
You want me to explain it?
Have those two statements.
Okay,
You think that's a contradiction? That's not a contradiction. No, it's a difference. Let me explain what I mean by that, because I know that sounds weird. I can make an argument from the standpoint of what do people consider to be morality from a human context. I can make that argument because that argument is from a human context. What do human beings consider to be morality? But in a objective sense, if you're taking yourself from the standpoint of a human being, then it doesn't really exist. It's like there's no such thing as up and down. Up and down only exists on Earth. That's all I mean by that. And I probably shouldn't have even said it. It's irrelevant to our conversation. From the way that we consider morality, the difficulty of morality is that's not the easiest thing in the world to nail down. I never said it was easy to nail down. It's the same way you look at this and say, well, look, killing a human being from the standpoint of an abortion is immoral. Somebody could say, bring a kid into the world in an area where it's not going to be loved, not necessarily wanted, and is going to have a really messed up life and end up shooting somebody later on. Maybe it's not the best either. I mean, after all, people have this argument about morality, about abortion, but it's okay with these kids not getting support once they're alive. We're okay with these kids living horrible lives in poverty. And I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the argument that right-wingers often make is we hate abortion, but we're not going to do anything when they get alive. So we don't want to increase taxes. We don't want to essentially pay for things.
I agree. I've criticized right-wingers on that. But
Yeah.
the only thing I want to say is that is the locus of the religious or philosophical discussion. The
Yeah.
idea that we're killing a human being is not up for debate. Let me give you an example for one. The zygote, the cell formed by the union of an ovum and a sperm, represents the beginning of a human being. Keith Moore is not a Christian.
It is the beginning of a human being.
That's
Well, I mean, at some point it does become a human being. I agree with you. The question is, at what point does it become a human being?
no. He says
That's the crux of the conversation, right?
No, he said it's the merging of the sperm of the egg is the beginning of the human life. That's what.
Yeah, that word.
Okay.
At that point, yeah, that's a religious argument to me. I'm sorry. I understand with you.
This is he's an so you know more about the embryology than the embryology.
So if I find 5 scientists that said that's not true, would it be, those scientists? No, I'm asking you. If I find this is not a conversation I came to thinking that we're going to have, but if I do, would that essentially change your mind on this conversation?
Well, I would say that it's a lot. It'd be like having a discussion about evolution, right? Like I can find 2 or 3 quote unquote quack whatever. What I'm saying is
so at that point they're quacks because you disagree with them.
No. Well, do you agree that did evolution happen? Yes or no?
Well, I think it's the main thought. Yeah, I think it's the main scientific ideology. Yeah.
Okay. And what I'm saying is among embryologists, that's the exact same ratio.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So, but now here's a philosophical problem. The philosophical problem is at this stage of development, what can we do to this Homo sapien? That's where the religion comes in. Because I'm saying, well, no, you shouldn't kill them. And you're saying, well, what you're saying is, well, because they're a less developed Homo sapien than me, we should be able to kill it. But the point is, so I
don't even consider it a Homo sapien. So I'm not even there. I don't agree with you. So we're not even there. I mean, but do I need to agree with you? And this becomes the crux of the religious stuff. Like, why do I need to agree with you on this? But you would say, well, we're killing people.
We're killing people.
Becomes, should we? Right. You would say we're killing people.
We are. So would Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood admits we're killing people.
Okay.
Like there's nobody that like really studies this discussion that doesn't admit we're killing people. That's why she called it a necessary evil. But my point is, you're saying that you would leave that out of your universal healthcare plan.
If that was the difference between 20 or 30 million people getting healthcare, yes.
Okay, what about you, Majestic? So here's what I don't understand from you, Majestic, because I sidetracked this discussion. I want you and Jamar to get back on your jihad, because I like seeing you two fight. If you say you're for universal health care,
yes,
then how can you disagree with anything that Jamar is saying? Because you're talking about Greece and all this, but you just said that America would not end up as Greece. So why are you disagreeing with Jamar?
Well, I'm disagreeing with Jamal on the presuppositions that he uses to hold his opinion. So, for example, he's made a claim about their CEO of Amazon saying, why is it right that he has $170 billion as opposed to 150? Well, I'm sorry, Jamal, but you don't get to decide what is the correct amount of money that I am able to earn as part of my free enterprise.
You are right. I'm not. As an individual, no, I'm not. But as a collective, we are. Yes.
Why?
Because we're living in a democratic system. As a democracy, we can choose to do that.
But the collective, bearing in mind, I hate collectivism.
You can hate it all you want, but it is what it is. I mean, either you have a democratic system or you don't.
Yeah, but you can have a democratic system of individuals. This is the great British liberal tradition.
But it is the interest of the individuals to come together as a group when it is in their interest to function as an individual collectively, correct? Meaning if half of the country is getting screwed over because maybe Amazon is able to essentially allow certain workers to live off the system because Jeff Bezos can pay somebody a really crappy wage because people need those jobs. If it's in the collective to say, look, we don't want these guys using our welfare system when Jeff Bezos has $150 billion. Jeff Bezos and Amazon can afford to pay that when Amazon gets by without paying taxes. Maybe Amazon should pay a wage that people can live off. So as a collective, you can understand that it is within the interest of the society itself to function collectively to make sure that companies, especially when those companies can afford to pay for themselves, pay for themselves.
Well, hold on, Reverend, hold on for a second. I got a super chatter. Reverend Satan is saying, Jamar, you're wrong. America is not and was never meant to be a democracy. America is a constitutional republic.
That is true. He's right. We're a representative government, but still,
so
as a representative government, we put our representatives in. Nothing I say changes in this. We, as a representative government, people use democracy for shorthand, but he's right. As a representative government, still, we can still make those choices to put representatives in power to represent our interests. If that interest is raising a minimum wage, then it is to raise a minimum wage.
Jamar, hold on for a second. Majestic, are you saying that you would want a system in which there is no minimum wage?
So I'm not a laissez-faire capitalist. There are some very good arguments around laissez-faire capitalist, which is every time that we've seen a laissez-faire type system, we have seen an explosion of basically creativity, because basically this is something when you look at economic trends. As you lower the barriers to entry to enterprise, you get a huge increase in the amount of products. YouTube is a very good example of this. There's everything from cat videos to political videos to God knows what happens when I'm on a 3 a.m. YouTube binge. That's because the barrier to entry is extremely low. As you add barriers to entry, and healthcare is actually a very, very good example of this, you make it so that only the big systems work, because only they can afford to have the compliance and the oversight costs to adhere to those systems. And so my personal one is again, the great English liberal tradition of I want the least necessary amount of rules and regulations for the society to work.
Okay, so why are you for any minimum wage then? You're just giving me arguments for laissez-faire. Why are you against it?
Why am I against? Why am I for minimum wage? I think that a minimum wage does provide, so long as it's properly managed, does provide a reasonable barrier of entry, so that you say when you start out on a job that you'll at least make some money. Now, what the minimum wage is, where I currently live, they rose the minimum wage recently, and what we found was that there are a number of jobs that were lost because simply the value that work provides to the company and the customer is less than the new cost of the minimum wage. And this is why you need balance is basically what I'm at. Okay,
so here's my question, and Jamar, jump in here. You're being too quiet. Is the balance that's being struck at Amazon right now a fair, moral, and right balance between Jeff Bezos and his employees?
So that depends on your presuppositions. So I look at what has Amazon provided the world in terms of access to goods, access to esoteric items that currently we didn't have before Amazon, access to great literature, access to art, music, all of those things, I believe, has irrevocably improved everybody, and I mean this in the global humanitarian sense, everybody's experience.
Except for the workers.
What's that?
Except for the workers. Because they're all on welfare.
And mind you, Amazon pays no tax. That's a very long answer for a short. The answer should have been no. Amazon is not a situation where the company is actually doing the best for its workers. The answer is no. That's a very long answer for something.
We're all talking at once. It's Jamal's turn. He's been very quiet. Jamal, I'm going to ask you, and then you get to answer because it was a very long answer. And honestly, Majestic, I didn't get much clarity from it.
I was told this was the smartest man in the world.
He is. That's probably why he didn't like the implications. I don't think you like the implications of my question, Majestic. So you
might not have liked the implications, but what you were getting at was right.
You went the circuitous route, Majestic, because I don't think that you really. Majestic, I'm starting to figure you out, my man. So Jamar, what about you? Answer my question. My question was: is the balance between the point of entry as Majestic rightly articulated about minimum wage? Do you think that it's fair, legal, moral for the good of the society as a whole, considering the positive global impact that Amazon has had?
No, of course not. I mean, are you serious? Like, look, if Jeff Bezos, let me see, I might need to increase my value. Jeff Bezos has $150 billion. Put that in context. What does that look like for a man to have that much access to resources? That is an amazing sum of money. Now, the idea that Amazon pays no tax, that's the first point. Amazon, we pay more taxes than Amazon. Think about that.
Stop right there.
Fact check me.
Majestic, will you contest? All I need is a yes or no statement, my guy. Are you contesting that Amazon pays taxes, yes or no? Or you don't know?
It depends. Like where I am, there's a big thing about trying to get Amazon to pay tax locally, but I'm not sure about the US tax system for that particular thing.
Well, if there's
Look up PolitiFact. Wait. Fact check.
well,
Go to
that means
PolitiFact.
you're not paying taxes.
Go to PolitiFact and type in Amazon zero taxes. And the second item, Bernie Sanders says Amazon pays no federal taxes. In fact, checked by Politico, true. The answer is true.
Well, he just admitted it because he says where he lives, there's a thing they try to get them to pay taxes locally. Where do you live?
So let me be clear. So understand what we're saying here. Not only does they not
2 seconds, Jamar. Majestic, where do you live?
The greatest country in the world, New Zealand, freer than the States.
I love that.
Land of hobbits. Okay, and you're saying that in New Zealand, Amazon doesn't pay taxes either.
So what they don't pay tax on is what we call GST, or goods and service tax, which is the
Subhanallah.
same as the UK equivalent VAT. Now, there's a very interesting point here because our neighbours, Australia, recently implemented a system where they would get Amazon to pay the equivalent of GST at point of sale. So here's a very good example of what happened. They created Amazon Australia, and you've gone from access to I think it's 540 million items down to 60 million, all for the sake of paying tax. Now, that's an immediate effect. We haven't had the data because it's only been going, I think, 3 months now to see what the long-term impact is. But for me personally, I would prefer 540 million items versus 60 million.
So you're basically being extorted by
answer is
Amazon.
yes. That answer is yes. That means Amazon pays no tax.
You're basically being extorted by Amazon. Basically, is what you're saying.
His government, the greatest government in the world, apparently, is being extorted by Amazon.
When you introduce costs of compliance, not everyone can meet them, and a business is well within their rights to say, we can't. The cost of adhering to this particular regulation is too high. We're not going to do it.
Wow.
But understand the reason.
Hold on. Now it's Jamal. Jamal, I just want to say something before you go. Did you realize that not only federally, because what I'm saying is this is worse than what you said, because you said they don't pay federal taxes.
Yes, they don't pay federal tax.
What we've just found out is they've also been dodging taxes globally.
And think about this: when they tried to get Amazon to pay for more in taxes in Washington State, Amazon, I think it was Amazon, Starbucks, and a few companies went on a campaign against the local government to try. They were trying to put a head tax on the various people in that state because they have a homeless problem. They have a massive homeless epidemic. I think Seattle, Washington, like the second highest homeless epidemic in the world. And the city council was trying to do something about it. They passed legislation to increase the tax rate on multi-million-dollar companies. And those companies dumped a bunch of, you say, resources into those states in order to get people to rally against it. Within a few days, they were able to take that down. Now, Amazon is a multi-billion-dollar company. It doesn't pay any taxes. So put that in context. And beyond that, to make it worse, many of the people, they're paying such a poverty wage that those people are not only are they not paying taxes, that they're using government services just to make ends meet.
Yeah.
So you're getting a double whammy. Thank you. It's like you have the virtue of just having us in your presence. We are not going to have to pay anything to be here, though.
Well, I mean, that's basically what MJD just said. He said basically that they're being extorted because.
Now the question is that right? And as a democratic society or a representative republic, is that what you want? Is that what you want?
Well, MJD, do you think that this situation with Amazon is good? Let's get out of good, bad, moral, or immoral. Let me ask this question. Is it scary to you at all that one person can amass that much wealth and basically by himself blackmail and extort whole countries? One person.
I love that. I love the way you phrase that. Yeah, I love that.
Does that scare you at all?
No.
You said no?
Yeah.
So top 1%, you don't care. Like this idea that 1% can amass so much wealth that they have the ability to extort millions of human beings. That's okay.
Not 1%. This is one guy. It's 8 billion people on the planet.
Yeah.
Hold on. So Majestic, tell me why that is not a recipe for a new form of fascism that the world has never seen before.
Okay, that's a good point, but here's the counterpoint. What's the acceptable amount of money that Jeff Bezos earns And how would you enforce it?
No, I'm not worried about his acceptable amount of money that he can earn as an individual. What I'm worried about is the fact,
you're making,
brother, you're asking me a question. Let me answer it, brother. Let me answer it.
What's the acceptable amount?
Can I answer your question?
Sure.
What I'm worried about is the fact that one dude has the power to extort whole countries. That's what I'm worried about. And are you worried? And you're saying that that's not a problem?
Yeah, because again, this is an artificial cost of compliance that was made for political reasons, and I believe that businesses should be free to say, actually, if you don't want to play ball with us, we're not going to play ball with you. And if you find in the economic landscape that Amazon has more use to your population than your government,
Majestic, Majestic, you're explaining perfectly and eloquently how the fuck he extorted all these countries. Wow. I get it. I get the mechanisms that he used to extort those countries. What I'm saying is, aren't you afraid that one fucking guy out of the 8 billion people on planet Earth have that kind of power? That's what I'm saying.
And by the way, let's put that in context. We're talking about a Democrat. If your government makes a choice, you at the very least have some level of representative republic for you to do something about it. If Jeff Bezos makes a choice, then Jeff Bezos just made a choice. And your military and your government, your police forces are going to back him up to protect his private enterprise in the process. Like, put it in context. This is not a political decision in this. This is an individual who's extorting an entire country.
There's a simple answer. You vote with your wallet. That's the principle of capitalism. And now you have to...
It is a principle of representative republics for us to vote, period. Meaning, if we don't like that, they put it this way. For example, if the United States says, look, if Jeff Bezos doesn't want to pay taxes in the United States, fine, then Amazon doesn't operate in the United States. It is within the government itself of the United States if we decide that because this country, that company doesn't want to pay taxes, it doesn't want to pay its fair share, meaning it uses the electricity in this country, it uses, the workers in this country, but it doesn't want to pay those things. Why is that fair? Why is it okay to use the labor and expropriate the wealth, but not necessarily pay anything back?
Majestic, hold on, Majestic, say it again.
Are you saying that they get their electricity for free? They get their labor for free? We're talking taxes, and you're trying to shift the goalpost there. So no, the answer to the conundrum is people vote with your wallet, and so the individual has to make a moral choice. I might say I don't like Amazon's business practices, but I like Amazon's product offering. And so I am then free to make the choice. Do I buy the item from Amazon or do I find a competitor? And I'm free to decide that actually them paying tax is not as big a deal to me as the things that I want to buy.
Okay, MJD, okay. Let me ask you a question. Are you in favor of antitrust laws?
That's a minefield and a half.
Because I'm not sure how you're going to respond here.
I think he already told you how he's going to respond. The answer is no, he's probably not.
Hold on, Jamar. Let him talk. Go ahead, NJD.
So antitrust is one of those areas where I believe there does need to be some protection because there is no such thing as perfect information sharing or perfect knowledge.
Protection from what? What do we need to be protected from?
Well, the excesses of crony capitalism.
What the fuck? Hold on, wait. Stop, Majestic, hold on. Majestic, do you see any inconsistency with what you just said?
Not at all. Because this is remember right at the beginning, my first statement was, I believe in the bare minimum necessary laws. Okay? That's because I'm not a laissez-faire capitalist. But, for example, you look at Amazon. There are alternatives to Amazon, such as AliExpress.
Stop it. It's not an alternative to Amazon. Look, Majestic, you gotta admit that you probably didn't connect your idea of antitrust laws with how we should handle Jeff Bezos. Just be honest. You can't say on the one hand that you're for government protecting us against the exigencies of capitalism, and then out of the same mouth say that you're okay with one guy, not even a corporate, one dude, you're okay with one guy manipulating entire nations and fucking up their GDP because they dare to tax it. Like, you gotta see that as being inconsistent.
It's
I mean,
not an inconsistency, though. I've said I'm for some regulation.
Okay, but
Okay.
are you for any regulation of Jeff Bezos and what he's doing on the planet?
So this comes back to this very key point.
It's a yes or no question.
It's not a yes or no. If you are for regulation of Jeff Bezos, you have to tell me what is the acceptable amount of money that he is allowed to make and how you are going to enforce it.
But you're obfuscating the argument. The argument is not what is the acceptable money. Let me answer the question. It is, how in the world does a regular Joe like me get taxed out the yin yang? And I'm fine with getting taxed. I'm fine with the government going into my wallet to help pay for roads and schools and shit. I'm good with that. But how the fuck does a guy who uses our system to deliver his packages circumvent federal taxation? And you say and you're trying to say that I'm upset at him because he's making a bunch of money? No, he's not paying his fair share when he's benefited from federal taxes.
Yes. Yes.
I hear what you're saying, but for all the services that he consumes, he pays for.
No, he doesn't. He does not pay for the U.S. mail. Does he, Jamar, help me? Doesn't he pay USPS or something? Doesn't he use the U.S. The federal mail system to deliver his packages?
Use whatever system he can to deliver his packages.
You have to pay for couriers, yes?
He does have to pay for couriers. Yeah.
Oh, so
I mean, I guess the question is he using the roads?
Is he using the roads?
Is he using our police force to protect Jeff Bezos when he's walking through the city?
Well,
is he breathing clean air? Is he? I guess I'm making a point that he is using our system. He is using the labor and the materials of our system, and they're getting
taxes.
But they're not paying corporate taxes. Yeah, other companies pay taxes.
Is that moral? Is that good, MJ?
As I said, morality. But what I actually want to get back to is I want to go through this.
I guess I'm saying that's brutal to answer. Amazon pays no taxes. Like, you think about how much you pay in taxes, how much I pay in taxes, how much did I pay last year in taxes? It hurt.
I'm not mad for paying taxes.
I'm not mad either, but it does bite into your wallet, especially as an individual that's just barely making ends meet. And you look at a multi-billion-dollar company who A, screws his workers over, B, has his workers working in horrible conditions.
You know what? Listen. Here, I'm gonna throw this out to both of you. If the U.S. government said to Jeff Bezos, "You pay your guys $25 an hour, all your workers $25 an hour, or we'll forgo the corporate tax," I would be fine with that.
That's fair enough. That's your position. But here's my thing, okay? You keep mentioning billions and billions. He makes billions. So let's run this through to its logical.
No, brother, that's not what I'm mentioning. Hold on. Don't straw man my argument. What I'm saying is he's not paying taxes, and he has the power to extort other countries into making him not pay taxes. Don't misconstrue my argument.
So here's what's likely to happen. There are alternatives to Amazon in Australia that I know of, okay? They're not as big as Amazon. But here's the thing. If Australians collectively, as a country, go, actually, we're not happy with Amazon, as you say, extorting us, they can go elsewhere. And then Amazon will find its market share decreasing. Now, they then have a choice. They might say, Australia, population 10 million, it's not big enough slice of the pie for us to budge. Or they might go, maybe we should start playing ball. That's the beauty of the capitalist system. The flip side is when you keep mentioning Jeff Bezos and how much he makes, you have to provide a way to say,
MJ, stop straw manning my argument. I don't care how much he makes. I care how much he pays in taxes. Please address that.
I've addressed that, and now I'm addressing Jamal's point, which is keeps bringing up the amount that Jeff Bezos earns.
In the context of extorting other countries underpaying his workers. They're basically operating a fiefdom and using all of the resources that a regular taxpayer has to pay to benefit his mega corporation. That's what he talked about. He didn't just talk about how much money Jeff Bezos made.
Yes, but you say in comparison to what he pays his workers. So, what is the acceptable amount for Jeff Bezos to earn? How do you calculate it and how do you enforce it? Because what we see in every country that has implemented a system like this, no one can agree on what's an acceptable amount, and eventually heads will roll.
Like what?
That's
A system like what?
okay. Pol Pot.
A system like Pol Pot? Is that what you said? You think Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez is trying to implement a system like Pol Pot?
No, that's a straw man.
Then why did you bring up Pol Pot?
Get out to its logical conclusion. That is where it ends up.
That's where what ends up?
No, look, okay.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Hold on. We got to talk about a couple other things. Majestic, I love you, my brother. You know what? You know I love you, right?
And I love you.
Thanks, man.
Now, I wouldn't pull back. I mean, I got a little exercise here because like there's this giant apocalypse that I'm.
Wow.
Because
of the Pol Pot.
Now, let me ask you a question. Majestic. Let me ask you a couple questions. Please just say yes or no. Have we ever seen it? Because we're all evolving, at least socially. Can you agree with that? Human beings.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. For sure. Okay. So, is it possible that there are some unforeseen eventualities about capitalism that we now have to adjust to? Is that possible?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
I've stated it's not a perfect system.
Okay, one of those would be, antitrust laws. It was like we looked at that and we said, shit, we can't do this complete laissez-faire thing because we're going to be fucked by these people, right? Would you agree?
Correct.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, have we ever seen something like what Jeff Bezos is doing in world history?
Yes. So there was, what's his name? Howard Hughes at one point he basically did a whole bunch of shit. Who else? You had...
Whoa. Howard Hughes, hold on, because I'm completely ignorant.
It's like Amazon?
Howard Hughes had the power to extort entire nations.
Now, let me just get my facts right here.
There's nothing like Amazon.
Extremely dodgy shit in third world countries.
No,
solely on the fact that he was the richest man on earth.
New Zealand. No, I'm not talking about a rich man. I'm talking about a rich dude who is extorting not third world countries, but first world countries.
And I know he had a lot of strings in Hollywood. You could also argue J. Edgar Hoover was another one. J.
Edgar Hoover wasn't a capital. J. Edgar Hoover was part of the FBI.
Wait, can I just say, Majestic, because I'm not as educated on this stuff as either one of you. Okay, so I'm sort of like just the crazy being on the street. But isn't it true that what we're seeing with Amazon is entirely unique? Extorting first world countries.
The only unique aspects of Amazon, as far as I'm concerned, is that the internet has allowed companies to cross borders in the way that traditional business models weren't able to, and that creates a whole set of problems.
Okay.
For me personally.
Then why not just say that? Why not just say, yes, Amazon is something different?
In internet-based fields, I'm against the taxation of things on the internet purely from the point of view that historically, if we look at how England behaved, once you tax a populace, you can enforce laws on them, and I don't want governments trying to gain ownership of the internet.
Okay, now Majestic. So we agree that something is completely unique is happening because Bezos has hacked the internet in such a way. He's probably 20 years ahead of the rest of us, right? So we agree something different is happening with him, right?
Well, this is the thing. Like, are you aware of what the growth trend on AliExpress has been over the last 10 years?
I hear you about AliExpress. What I want to get agreement on is that something unique is happening with Jeff Bezos. Can we agree with that?
I can't agree with it because the way that I look at it, well, this is the fundamental point of view. I look at it as an individual who's got a really good idea, such as Netflix, such as YouTube. All of these companies were started in one or two individuals. Google, for example, was started by 3 people after Yahoo had been declared the winner of the search engine wars. I can't agree with it because time and time again we see companies, particularly on the internet, where there is very little in the way of startup cost. A good idea can grow to massive proportions. So I can't agree with that presupposition, Vin.
Wait, can I intervene on something like this? I'm sorry, the length of the answer is long, but the internet was an investment by the United States government. With that logic, should the United States government keep the majority share or keep the share at which it invested in the internet or in any company? In any company that the United States government has invested in, should the United States company keep its share based on that logic of the argument?
So here's my, I don't agree with that, and there's reasons I don't agree with that. Here's my question though.
So wait, so the government invests, but the government should give it all away after it invests?
No, because DARPANET evolved into ARPANET, and there's differences around what the military used in terms of.
Yeah, but the original investment was the United States government. I'm asking you, why is it fair that we as private taxpayers invest all of this money, but should just give it away afterwards?
Well,
And that's not just with the internet, that's with anything.
I'm going to ask you this question.
Answer mine first.
How?
Answer his question, MJ.
Well, this is why I can't answer that question. Because
Why not?
I have to ask, which is
Wait, stop.
Why not?
Stop.
Why is that question uncomfortable?
Answer his question because you have another question to ask. Answer his question and then ask yours.
No. It will elucidate my answer.
All right,
What
go
is
ahead.
the internet? Is it the servers that serve content? Is it the fiber in the ground? Is it the routers? What is the internet?
But you just said right a few minutes ago that only a few people created the internet. And those people, you feel strongly that those people should be able to make as much money as they want to make because they're good capitalists and they created the internet. I injected that the United States government had a large investment in the internet, and should the United States government get its money back? To which case you demurred and say, what is the internet? Did you know what the internet was when you were making your case prior?
That's not what I said. I said
that is literally what you said. You said 2 or 3 people.
What you said. You literally said that. Are you taking it back? Are you striking it from the record?
What I said was internet companies are formed by 1 or 2 individuals.
Okay. But still, my argument is the same. Even if a few companies were created on a device that the United States government invested heavily in, should the United States government get that money? Should we as the taxpayers get money back because we created the internet?
Well, I'd say no, because, I mean, if you really want to get technical, the internet was created by Tim Berners-Lee, who's an Englishman. He was the one that created the HTTP protocol. And
yeah, but it had a heavy investment by the United States government. Same thing with Twitter. I mean, we can go down a list of items. I guarantee you, we can name a list of items that the United States government had a heavy investment in. What I'm asking is, why is it always fair that the U.S. government invests, but private enterprise gets the gains, and then turn around and say the United States government shouldn't do X or shouldn't get Y? And I'm saying taxpayers at this point.
Because all of the things that actually made the internet what it is was done by private companies.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna make a statement, true or false, and you can only answer true or false, Majestic. True or false? Without the investment of the United States government, we would not have the internet, and companies like Amazon, Facebook, and Twitter would not exist. True or false?
That's true to a degree.
Wow. He answered that true. I gotta be honest. I had no expectation of you answering that honestly.
Okay, now stop.
Appreciate that.
Now, since
God, you have no idea how much I appreciate you answering that question. Yes.
Okay, now since you
I'm profoundly blown away. I'm in battle mode. I'm like, oh, where is he going to say now?
Since you answered that true, The next question that Jamal asked is absolutely relevant.
I'm floored.
Since the United States was the primary investor,
I'm sorry.
Since the United States was a primary investor, doesn't it stand to reason that in any other situation with a primary investor, that the United States should get the bulk of that in market share?
You've changed the terms. You said, is it true that the internet wouldn't exist without the US? I agreed. I didn't say it was the primary investor because there's a shit ton of English UK investment that went into creating the internet.
It was
Common
all
heritage.
equal.
I'm okay with common heritage.
Okay, so if we go with all equal, should the UK and the US get their share? Well,
I'm
here's
okay
the
with that.
productivity that the internet provides has generated whole new areas of taxation, and so that is how they reap the benefit.
Now stop right there. 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 Stop right there.
Amazon doesn't pay any tax.
It has, with the exception of a certain company. Isn't that true, Majestic?
They employ people who are paid a salary and get taxed, do they not?
Yes.
They consume services on
Majestic, there is a company that is circumventing the federal. This is getting just comical now. Why are you being so dishonest?
What is everyone else saying?
I'm actually surprised by this, Majestic. Why are you doing this? Like, here's the only point that I'm trying to make, Majestic. Since we're all evolving socially as human beings, and since we've got this placeholder called capitalism, doesn't it stand to reason that when we come up with new situations that impossible for us to conceive of 50, 100 years ago, shouldn't we evolve our laws to cover those new eventualities? That's all. That's the only place I was going.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
How do you evolve those laws?
Say again?
How precisely do you evolve those laws?
Well, one of them is, I'm not a smart, I mean, Jamar, jump in here. I'm just going to say, one would be, we would create laws in such a way that one individual doesn't get to extort whole countries. That would be one.
We have a government.
Exactly.
We have political.
The same way we did antitrust laws, right? Because we had this problem earlier, and we fixed it with antitrust laws, right? So
The same way we did slavery.
Same we did slavery, and people
We
were
had
asking the
people
same
who were
question. Right?
slaves, and they were people who were making the arguments that why are we getting rid of slavery? Slavery is a more moral choice. We had people make an argument about slavery being a moral choice. We make laws.
Also saying that slaves were not really human, by the way, Jamar. I don't know.
That's the other point.
I don't know that argument is.
We have
Somebody made that argument earlier that certain people weren't human, so it was okay to do whatever we wanted with them.
Laws can be evolved. That's the point. Laws can be evolved. If you're asking how do we do it, we've done it many times before. We make laws all the time. That Trump passing that law that's giving away trillions in tax cuts, that was a law that was being passed.
Okay,
You
now
haven't answered the question.
what do you mean I haven't answered the question?
Exactly. Do you restrict an individual's freedom? Does it mean that he
That's
can't?
not freedom.
Majestic,
You
stop.
force him at the gunpoint.
Majestic, my brother,
Something stuff
stop
to do.
strawmanning the argument. Nobody's trying to restrict Jeff Bezos' freedom. What I'm trying to restrict, bad guy like Gargamel, who's the bad guy from Inspector Gadget? Claw. Every single bad guy wants to rule the entire fucking planet, and that's what we're dealing with here. I don't care about an individual's right to earn as much money as he wants. What I'm worried about is an individual who has whole countries by the nuts and the implications of what that can mean if he's a certain kind of person.
Yeah. And
That's what I'm saying we want to avoid. Don't you want to avoid that?
Yeah, but how do you fix that? And I'm saying the alternative, the way that has been tried in the past, comes at the barrel of the gun.
No, not true. We passed antitrust laws without murking millions of people. That's just not true.
Yeah, but antitrust is specifically within a country. You're wanting to establish a cross-boundary law.
That's because we have a cross-boundary tool called the internet.
Yes.
So, but you're making a non sequitur. You're saying that if we control some of these people, it's automatically gonna turn into the USSR and the Gulag and all that shit. And I can tell you, I've done tons of reading on that. How much Solzhenitsyn have you read, Majestic? Serious question.
It's on my reading list. read Marx when I was what, 13, 14.
Okay, so you don't realize how the communist socialist ideology metastasized into killing all those people. So you can't say that. What I'm telling you is what we're talking about is vastly different than what happened in the USSR. We're talking, as a matter of fact, honestly, what you're talking about is much closer to leading us to that type of eventuality than what Jamar is talking about, because you are talking about putting power, unimaginable power, in the hands of one person.
You're talking about a fascistic, you're talking about a Hitlerist government. I mean, you're talking about a right-winger.
I mean, don't you, like, if Jeff Bezos was a really evil person, more evil than he is for doing that to his worker, but let's say that he's like genocidal, and then he has all these countries by the nuts. Don't you see really bad eventualities happening there?
Sure. So long as you can show me Jeff Bezos' personal army, then I might take that seriously.
New Zealand, America, he owns these countries. What are you talking about? They're all his personal army.
No, he doesn't.
All right.
Because you're trying to extend what has happened, which is
he running for office? He doesn't need to run for office. He owns the office. Why don't people understand this?
By the way, just to make a point about the capitalistic thing, the bananas. Let's talk about the banana. So there's an awesome.
Hold on. All right. So Jamal's going to talk. I'm going to shut up because I'm talking too much. And because
we always talk. People bring up socialism in this case, but they never talk about what takes place from the standpoint of the capitalistic system, especially from the standpoint of countries. So let's talk about the banana. So you had a company that control ownership of the banana, and that company goes into South America, and starts buying up plots of land. And in buying up plots of land, it gathers a huge amount of strength. And in that strength, it uses that strength to attack workers, because those workers, after living in horrible conditions, decide that they want to agitate for more rights. Hey, maybe we want not necessarily to work every day. Hey, maybe we want a little better living conditions and everything else. The company tells the U.S. government that the government in South America, I forget the country, I think it's Guatemala, it's in Guatemala, that they're creating a communist revolution. Doing so, the United States foments a revolution in this country and institutes a right-wing dictatorship. Everything that I'm saying here is a flat fact. The CIA gets to the point of bombing the building of the capital of Guatemala. Eventually, the government of Guatemala collapses. A right-wing dictatorship comes into power, and that right-wing dictatorship, of course, makes deals with the banana company, because the banana company was the instigator of all of this process. Now, from the standpoint of us in the United States, you may say capitalism is great. I would point to you that if you look around the world and you look at some of these smaller countries that tend to trend towards socialistic reasons, they do it for reasons. It's not they're insane. It's not that they're crazy. It's because they've taken the boot of the capitalistic system in a way that we in this country have not. It's not as straightforward as, oh my God, they're going to implement Pol Pot. That's insane. That's nonsense. I mean, if you talk to a real socialist, a hardcore socialist, what they would tell you is that people like FDR were the people who stopped those kind of socialistic revolutions from taking place in the United States, not people who were trying to take the country into socialism. There's a difference in those things. I'm just saying, if you float in lefty circles, you would hear a very different conversation on why they don't like people like Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez. And to some degree, it would be because they believe that they keep the system the way it is. By making small beneficial changes in the system that takes away a certain amount of revolutionary potential.
Okay, Jamar, talk about Venezuela though. Why is that? And I think
Venezuela?
Was Majestic. Did you bring up Greece?
Yeah, there's been Greece. There's been a bunch of African countries. I mean, currently, for example, we've got Zimbabwe is actually a really interesting case because they made a whole bunch of laws taking away privately held land. I think it was in the mid-90s under Robert Mugabe.
Yeah.
They've now realized that actually the people that own that land knew what they were doing. And I think it was in the last month, if my memory is correct, they've now started inviting those people back. Now, bearing in mind, I knew some people from Zimbabwe when I grew up. They basically fled from that country for their life because there were basically gangs of people armed with machetes going around killing the farmers.
White farmers.
Things happen. The same thing is happening.
South Africa.
Yeah, South Africa.
Okay. So talk, Jamar.
But that's not indicative of socialism.
We
That's
can't talk about this without talking about Venezuela, Zimbabwe, etc. So
but
why have
those are different. All of those places have different political realities, and all of those places are not the same. You understand that, right?
Hold on, Jamar, because Majestic has to disappear. Okay, Majestic, make your final statement because you got to go in 2 minutes.
Okay. Really quickly, every time a socialist perspective has been tried, it's ended in bloodshed. There's no way to reconcile the freedom of the individual without a free market economy of some description. We can agree on what limits should be placed on that so that it doesn't turn tyrannical. I'm not saying the system is perfect, but compared to every other system that has ever been floated, capitalism works and other systems don't. And I'd posit the reason it works is it's compatible with human universals, human nature, whereas every other system is, as noble it is, bear in mind, I read Marx, I think communism is a great idea, except humans fuck it up. I think that's probably the most generous way that I can put it. If you got rid of humans and replaced us with a more evolved species that could think on a global humanistic level.
Or a Christian species.
Well, tell me again, Vin, the US's love for Christianity. But yeah, I do have to disappear. Thank you very much, Vin, for having me on. Thank you very much for Jamal. You've been a good opponent. Thank you very much for the chat. I know some people like what I say. Some people thought I was a muppet, but fuck about that.
I love you, my brother.
Thanks,
We'll talk again soon.
Bye.
There's a lot of nonsense on steroids that he just put out there. So let's start talking about it.
All right, Majestic.
All right. So the first point, this whole idea of
we gotta wrap up soon. So talk about Venezuela. Talk about those countries that failed. Every time we've done a socialist experiment, it's failed miserably. Jamar, go for it.
I don't know if that's true. So that's the first point. Every time that we've done is somewhat of an absolute, and usually absolutes are a little bit off. Wait a minute, let me put up my volume just so we're clear. All right. I got to be honest. I don't know everything that's taking place in Venezuela's situation. I know there are different variants, forms of socialism. That's the first point. My goal in this is not to defend Venezuela because the United States has nothing to do with Venezuela. The apples and oranges. I don't know the scenarios, the commonalities. There is nothing similar.
Argument is every time, especially in the last, let's say, 15 years, we've tried a socialist experiment. It has destroyed the countries that we've run the experiment on. So why are we any different?
What are the socialist experiments?
Venezuela, Greece.
And you believe that Venezuela, okay, first, Greece is not a socialist country. Greece is a capitalist country. Greece took a lot of loans and has been under this kind of boot of the EU. Greece doesn't even own its own currency. So this is what I mean. None of this makes sense. It's nonsense on stilts. The Greece scenario that they always bring up has nothing to do with anything.
Okay, Venezuela.
This is clear. Wait, because this needs to be very clear. Greece doesn't even own its own currency. Greece is using a euro. Greece cannot even borrow its own money. They don't own their own currency. The United States owns its own currency. It's not nowhere near the same. It would be like Texas. Texas compared to the United States. Texas doesn't own the dollar. The United States, or the dollar, you can make a case, is owned by the United States government or greenbacks.
Hold on.
So drastically different. They're not even on the same page.
Okay, what about Venezuela? Why did Venezuela crash and burn? They're eating rats now.
I don't know why Venezuela crashed and burned. So I'm not an expert on Venezuela. So I'm not even going to try to make the case for Venezuela. Venezuela stands on its own. I would say sometimes we look at these countries as if these countries are in their own world. These countries are not in their own world. These countries are floating in political realities, meaning they're not a thing unto themselves. I have no idea why Venezuela is failing is the way that Venezuela is failing. What I would tell you is what Sanders and Ocasio are talking about has nothing to do with Venezuela. Like, I guess that's what I'm trying to impart in your mind, that they're nowhere near the same. They don't even consider these guys real socialists. And if you look back to what FDR was pushing for, you'd have a hard time figuring out what FDR, a Democrat, the daylight between FDR, Democrat, and Bernie Sanders, whatever the hell Bernie Sanders is, I guess a Democratic Socialist. They're not the same.
Hold on, I got another guest here. Bmfan, is that you?
Yep, this is me.
What do you got, buddy? You're my anarcho-capitalist?
Oh, no,
Oh
I'm not.
God.
ANCAPs are absolute insanity. I hate ANCAPs.
Okay, well, you don't hate them. Well, you do support Antifa, so you might hate them and assault them in the street.
I mean, ANCAPs tend to side with fascists, so possibly.
Oh my God, you're a psychopath. All right, go ahead.
Well, no, he's right actually, but he's right for a reason. I mean, it's a logical reason as to why he's right. Handicaps would stem more towards fascists.
So then we should attack them in the streets.
Well, I didn't go that far. I think you lose the moral high ground when you're talking about.
This is my man. My man. This is what he's about. Okay, go ahead, Bmfan. BM, I forgot to ask you. Are you a member of Antifa?
There is no members of Antifa.
Oh, here we go. Okay, so we got a member of Antifa.
I love that.
No,
The only rule of the Fight Club. There is no Fight Club. I love it.
Okay, go ahead, Bmfan.
I just wanted to talk briefly about Venezuela.
Okay.
Oh, good.
So if we are, this is the problem with talking about socialism, because no one really, everyone refers to it in so many different ways. So there's socialism, which is, workers controlling the means of production. Like
that is socialism, by the way. Wait, just so we're clear. That's why I always demur. It's like when people bring up Venezuela, I'm like, it's difficult talking about a subject when everybody has different understandings of it. People call Stalinism socialism. They call Leninism socialism, Marxism socialism. This idea of workers owning the means of production and kind of this anarchist socialism, that type of stuff. All of those things are strain of socialism. The last strand deals with no hierarchy, which is a strand I'm more akin to when I think about how I fit into this kind of thing. I don't like this hierarchical system, so I tend to more towards libertarian socialism.
Okay, so what happened in Venezuela?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
If we're looking at Venezuela honestly is basically just a social democracy also. It's not actually socialism. It's not even democratic socialism. Because if we look at Venezuela, was Venezuela's factories, were those run by the workers? No. So they didn't actually have a socialist economy. What Venezuela did have was a nationalized oil industry. You know who else has a nationalized oil industry? Norway. So by that looking, and also because Norway also has, social programs, which we generally refer to as socialism now, when it really isn't, you could actually argue that Venezuela and Norway both are, in terms of, I guess, political economy, very, very similar. So Venezuela also, I think they had like over 70% of their industry is private also, not even public. Like, you can't call that socialism.
Okay, so what happened in Venezuela? Why are people eating rats?
Partially because when the government did nationalize the oil industry, there was a big oil boom. And so they were able to do the things that they wanted to do. Like, if you actually look, poverty dropped like 70% after they acquired that oil industry. They were able to do so many amazing things. And then the boom ended and all the money left. And also they had bad trade policies with the United States. Like, the United States started kind of actively being antagonistic towards them.
Well, they're attacking them. They're sanctioning their government. There's a socialist government. The United States doesn't. Socialist in quotes, but the United States is antagonistic towards that government and has been for a while. They've put sanctions on it, meaning it made it more difficult to use that oil money. Meaning the oil money that they do have is more difficult for them to use. So the country went into a spiral.
Correct. That is basically what happened. And not to say that like Maduro and Chavez didn't make lots of mistakes. They absolutely did. But to say it's socialism is just really really wrong.
When you say they took over the oil industry, that means that they had private companies that they bought out, or they just snatched the industry away from the private companies?
I can actually look that up really quick for you. I'm pretty sure that they bought them out though. Let me look it up.
Well, they bought them out without any other alternative.
What do you mean?
Meaning, look, we're going to take your oil field, Mr. Venezuela person. we'll give you X amount of money. You better take it. Otherwise, we're going to
Oh,
take
I see. I see. Take it or leave it. Yeah.
That's what they did, huh?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know how Chavez did this. Oh, geez. The dogs are fighting.
Is that what happened? Now, my friend here, Bmfan, he's cool with the government doing that. He's a state.
I am too. Yeah, I am too.
You're cool with the government running up and stealing somebody's property in their business.
How did they get that property? Like, let's go back for a moment with what's his name? He bought up Zimbabwe, South Africa. He bought up Mugabe. Why did Mugabe do that?
Well, no, that's completely different. That's white folks who are second, third.
Right, that's my point. But he threw all of that into the conversation about socialism as if all those things were exactly the same. I'm saying they're not. Those are very different things. They have different political realities on the ground.
What justification did the government have for jacking these people's private companies?
In Venezuela, I don't know if that's what took place.
Bmfan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm just trying to look it up right now. Unfortunately, there's a lot of information regarding. I'm not seeing the government took over the thing. It seems like it's been a thing that's kind of been going on since 1976, actually.
Let me ask you this: if a company owned,
I don't like paying for everybody's health care. I love that. Stopping Jeff Bezos' evil fucking plan to dominate the world. I'm for that. I don't like the government rolling up in other people's.
Let me ask you this: if you lived in a society, and in that society, a company owned 90% of the wealth, would you still be saying, wait a minute, it's not fair for the company to kind of redistribute that, having one company or one person own that much of the wealth? I mean, I don't know the political realities that was taking place in Venezuela. I don't like private enterprise owning a large share of the resources of a country. And what I'm asking you is, if a company owned a large share of the resources of a country because it was able to prey on that country through means, or let's say other means in fair business play, would it be fair to renationalize or to nationalize those products? Let's say oil. Let's use Venezuela as an example.
Well, they work their ass off to create a business, Jamar. You can't just roll up in there and steal it from them. What the hell?
Wait. Let's dig into that,
because he's going to tell us what happened in Venezuela, because this might be a moot point. Go ahead,
okay.
Okay, so it looks like they created their own company, basically, and then that company basically bought off all other companies. So all those other companies just became part of the bigger one.
They voluntarily did that, or they had no other choice?
They probably were bought out.
I think they were bought out.
100% of them.
Yeah, they nationalized it. If they nationalized it, they bought them out. They took it all.
Which means they didn't have any other choice, though.
Yes.
Okay.
Does a company have a right to open a company in somebody else's country?
That's status bullshit. You can't, the government can't go in there and buy out your company involuntarily.
Why not?
That's just as scary to me as Bezos.
I mean, that is a country making a choice. Let me ask you this: does a company have a right to operate in somebody else's country?
12% of the society. So if the majority in our society says that we can confiscate all the capital of black people, that's okay?
Has nothing to do with whether it's okay or not. I'm saying if it's a democratic country, that country can make that choice. Right and wrong in this case matters a little bit less. I'm asking you something different.
That's fascist bullshit to me.
It's not that I like it. Wait. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying.
It's the tyranny of the majority.
Okay. But that's the world that you live in. And again.
Well, that's a bad world too.
Fair enough.
We got to evolve.
Fair enough.
Well, just like with the Bezos thing, we got to evolve and stop holding all these sacred cows of capitalism and democracy and all that. We need to go toward a more evolved society where nobody gets to jack other people's shit, and no bad guy gets to take over the planet.
Well, the problem with that is you're not starting from a fair and playing field. Ultimately, most of the wealth that's had in this society is inherited. It's just came down the line from one place to the next to the last, and it just accrued. It got more and more and more.
I agree with that. What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with wealth accruing in the hands of one small majority? You get 5 people owning half of the world's wealth.
So if I work my ass off.
But it wasn't you working your ass off. It was a situation where the wealth was just inherited.
Well, somebody accumulated the wealth initially. So if I work my ass off for my kids, and then they work their ass off for their kids, and they pass it along, there's something. So some like in the 5th generation, some government can say, "Hey, you," and steal my grandkids' shit.
So you're okay with Jeff Bezos having that much cash?
No, because like I said, I never had a problem with Bezos's cash. What I had a problem was his ability to blackmail whole countries into not paying his fair share of tax.
You can't have it both ways. Oh yeah, right here, systemic. You can't have it both ways. I mean, you understand that the moment that somebody gets them, no, you can't. It doesn't
pay taxes.
No, okay, that's fair. Jeff Bezos can pay taxes. But
okay, so that's a bad analogy.
Okay, fair enough. But making the argument that I'm saying that Jeff Bezos using the money to blackmail states is inherent to Jeff Bezos having that money. And you can't, they're inextricably linked. There's no such thing as a person going to have that money and not use that money for their ends.
If he was taxed proportionally from the beginning, he wouldn't have been able to amass that type of power.
That is true.
And what I'm saying is I don't want my kids to have that type of power. But I also don't want a government rolling up in there. First of all, when you say, it's a democracy for the people, blah, blah, blah. First of all, even if they took all my kids' shit, you and I know very well that money would go back to the politicians in control and the lobbyists. It wouldn't go to a regular citizen.
Under my mind, but in my head, the issues that plague us are systemic. Like, in my head, this is not Jeff Bezos is a horrible bad guy and Jeff Bezos is the only horrible bad guy. In my head, it's Jeff Bezos has that money, and because he has that money, he tries to find ways to increase the amount of money that he has, in which case he uses that money to buy politicians.
I think he's a bad guy.
Out of curiosity, can I ask something?
Go for it. We got to go soon.
So earlier we were talking about the whole pharmaceutical industry and everything.
Yeah.
Evil as hell.
What if we did fight with them, we tried to get them to lower their prices, but they still wouldn't do it?
Then they don't have business in the United States. Is a pharmaceutical company willing to give up? Like, for example, they care about their profit.
Question for me, Bmfan?
I guess both.
Are they going to do that, though? Like, the United States government, if they wanted to, Congress, I don't know if they're going to do this, but Congress can say that nobody can buy a drug in the United States, that the only drug buyer in the United States can be the United States government, and then turn around and sell those drugs to the people of the United States. Congress can do all sorts of things. They're not going to give up the United States market.
That was kind of where I was going with it. Like, could you possibly foresee the government actually taking over those pharmaceutical companies?
Oh God, no. They wouldn't take them over. This is still a capitalist country. I mean, what they would do is they would try to force the cost of the drugs down. That's what they would try to do to negotiate.
Those pharmaceutical companies didn't pull themselves up by the bootstraps. They get billions of dollars in grants a year for research.
Yes.
So it's not as if it's not the same as me working my ass off to build my own little personal empire to hand off to my kids. These guys get billions of dollars in grants every single year because there's basically a social contract that, look, if you're going to devote your entire life to pharmaceuticals, we're going to give you X so that you can help create better medicine for us. Well, on the flip side, if you then take that money and charge somebody $6,000 a pill, you're full of shit. And the government I don't have a problem with the government going in and saying, no, you can't do that. But that's something completely different from the government coming in and jacking. And I agree, eminent domain, we do it now. The government, all these libertarians, we're doing eminent domain now in our supposedly capitalistic free country, where the government basically says, look, motherfucker, we're taking your shit. Here's your money. Goodbye. Right? So
yeah, they do.
So I get it. But I think the pharmaceutical thing is a little bit different. Okay, we got to go. I'm very, very late. These poor people have been watching us for 4 hours.
No way. They doesn't watch us for us. That's funny. All right, fair enough.
It's been a while. Thank you guys so much. Bmfan, Elio Mike, Majestic Demon Lord. That's a very apt name because I
love that name. Majestic Demon Lord. I love that name.
He's Jeff Bezos' alter ego. It's probably Jeff Bezos the entire time.
That's what I was going to joke about.
Son of a bitch. Okay. That's my guy, though. He calls me every single time, Jamar, and we always have these giant jihads. Like, he's my favorite one. Yeah. And then Bmfan, we just found out today that Bmfan is part of AntiFa.
That's hilarious. No, there are no members to AntiFa.
Huh?
There are no members to AntiFa. I'm backing you up, my man.
Right. There's no members of AntiFa. Okay. So here's my final take. I think the probably the most productive conversation for me in this whole discussion with the discussion with Elio Mike, where at the end, Jamar, Elio, and I all agreed that if we really went after these pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies and lowered rates, and were able to find ways to increase taxation for the rich 1%, and give people their, capitalists, if you make a lot of money, you can still get your own private insurance. He agreed that if there was a way to cover everybody, we should do it. And I think I think that that's great. I think that means that we're making progress. And I think that we slowed down enough to listen to each other. Jamal made a very, very compelling argument for that. And I was glad to see Elio Mike honestly say, yes, if we could pull that off, I would countenance it. I love that. On the flip side, I do think the conversation with Majestic pointed out the fact that any economic system, when it interfaces with human nature, has dangers in it that the society has to constantly evolve to correct. Otherwise, you get, the USSR, or you get a terribly scary eventuality to me with Jeff Bezos. Mm-hmm. And I think what this means is, I think we probably need to move past labels like socialism, communism, blah, 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 and say, what is our morality as far as what is the grounding level of what we're willing to accept in a society? Are we willing to accept in a society a group of people who could be who can be completely impoverished for literal generations because somebody got sick, somebody got cancer?
Right.
Are we willing to accept that in our society? And should we do everything in our power to make sure that everybody has a living wage? And my assumption is, even though obviously as a Christian, I believe that everybody has a sinful nature, I still believe that everybody's created in the image of God, and we all have a basic understanding of what good should be and what empathy should be. And I think nobody will say publicly that they're cool. Maybe I'm being naive here, Jamar, because I'm going to let you close. But I don't think if you really sat down with any particular individual American in our chat, that anybody would be cool with the idea that people should be impoverished for 5 or 6 generations, or some kid working his ass off in school, should get killed because of the way that our current education system is. And so my conclusion is that whatever you want to call socialism, whatever, I think we all know that one man shouldn't have power over the entire world. I think we all know that, and we all want to stop that. I also think that we all believe that we should take care of our neighbor. And whatever economic system accounts for that is the side that I think all of us want to be on. I think when we talk about left wing versus right wing, one of the things I've always said in my videos, guys, is that these people are trying to divide us. Look, we've had the Obamas, the Clintons, and the Bushes in office for the last 20 years. And so we all like to play these left wing, right wing games, not realizing that these guys are getting rich off of our division. And I think we need to have more conversations like this. A guy like Elio Mike, who would consider himself a far righter, and then a guy like Jamar, who would consider him far left, and then you've got our resident fascist with Bmfan, who wants to assault people for having American flags in the street. I think we all, and you guys know where we stand on political issues that are hot button. But if we can all get together and talk to each other, it's us. We've got all this shit in common. The Bushes and the Obamas and the Clintons don't have in common our regular struggles, and they never did. I mean, Obama never really held a job. I mean, I'm not mad at the brother, but he never really held a job in his life. Never had to struggle the way that we've had to struggle. And I'm not mad at him. I'm just saying that these politicians and the people in the media, except for Jamar, because he's in the media, but you can trust him. Rachel Maddow is getting $30,000 a show, guys. So they don't have a vested interest in us all coming together and figuring this shit out. So I really, really appreciate it. I really love it. Bmfan, I love you, my man. You get 1 minute, and then I'm going to give the floor to Jamar, and then we're going to sign off because we got to tape a show for tomorrow.
I came in here a little late. I came in around like 11 o'clock or so because I had work. But this has been like really enjoyable. I really enjoyed listening to all of this. I kind of want to just talk a little briefly about kind of with the healthcare things. Like my mother is a nurse, so she deals a lot with having to go through insurance companies, and it is an absolute pain in the ass. Because there's a lot of times where like, well, this insurance company will accept this, but this one won't accept this. So single payer solves all of that crap, and it's just fantastic, you know?
Wow.
What else? I think that was like the big thing I just wanted to mention. Oh, one other little thing. So earlier we were talking about how socialism is, there really just aren't any socialist countries. Like there's socialism in the sense of social programs, but that's not actually socialism. And it's absolutely like drives me crazy when people in the chat start doing that. So stop doing that because you're going to give me cancer. And cancer costs a lot of money here in America because we don't have universal health care. So stop doing that.
Well, if you don't stop, Bmfan will fuck you up because he's in Antifa. Okay. All right, buddy. I love you. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
All right, bye.
All right, Jamal, you got the floor, my guy.
We've talked about a lot of stuff. So I would say this. You can have any world you want, providing you're willing to deal with the consequences. I say that a lot because that is perfectly true. Some people, they had fixed themselves to certain belief systems because they were born in certain areas. They had certain cultures, societies, and everything else that invested certain things in them. I think people sometimes don't pay attention to the violence that goes on around them. Like, I don't think they realize how much pain that's expended within your society just to keep your society the way it is. You have people who are Democrats and who are Republicans, and I would point to you that they're members of the same class. I would point to you that the issue is class. The issue here is not race, it's not sexuality, it's not any of these things. Yes, those things are factors. Don't misunderstand me. But from the political landscape, these guys use their sexuality or race or gender for political ends. It is not the end all and the be all to them. I would point this to you. Democrats don't care much about the poor in the way that they say they do, nor do Republicans care about the deficit. And I would say, look at what they are doing. Republicans increased the deficit by $9 trillion after screaming at Obama for X number of years that you couldn't increase it even like one dime or a penny. That's nonsense. Like, you can't have both of those things be true. By the same token, you look at the history of income inequality and everything else, and 95% of the wealth going to the top 1% under a Democrat who they call the socialist is embarrassing. Protecting the banks while letting homeowners go bust. That's embarrassing. Those are not things representative of somebody who's representing a particular demographic that it says it represents. I would wager to you that the chaos and the screaming that you're hearing from people, especially this clamoring about socialism, if you notice, 20 years ago, it wasn't there. Nobody was talking about socialism in these terms. They're talking about it in these terms now because of the failures that have been taking place and the stress that people are under. I would make this point, and I would end it here. What Bernie Sanders is talking about and what Ocasio-Cortez is talking about is not socialism. They're not talking about workers owning the means of production. They're not talking about nationalizing the railways or nationalizing the energy sectors. They're talking about modest changes similar to what FDR was putting into place. I will leave it at that. They're not pushing a radical thing. They're using socialism in their names to create a demarcation point. But people have a tendency to mistake what they're talking about for actual socialism. It is not. They're talking about essentially a Scandinavia or Denmark. What is the point of life? And is the point of life really to work? I mean, that's what it boils down to. So look, this is a great conversation, and I agree with you. I don't like the labels. I don't fit within a label of in a political space of Democrat and Republican, and I think people need to get past those labels. What do you want for your society? Full stop. Start there. You have a representative government in a society. I think most people tend to try to be fair. I don't agree with you that everybody is okay with making sure everybody has health care. You have run into a lot of people who would say, yeah, let them die on the street. They wouldn't want to say that, but if you got them at 3 a.m. between them and their God, they would say, yes, let them down the street. I want to keep my money. I guarantee you that one of the things that's shocked me in the political space is that disposition is held by some people. Some people are terrifying. I don't think most people are that way, which is probably why the reason I think most people can come to some level of commonality in regards to agreement, even if it's not all the way. You may disagree with me that nationalizing the energy companies is a good thing. But we can come to a bare agreement of people shouldn't die on the street without healthcare, or for that matter, people shouldn't be crushed. And let me take my example. I had kidney failure when I was very young. And one of the things that you realize when you get sick when you're a kid is I'm going to be in poverty for the rest of my life if I don't get a job. How do you get a job if you're not, healthy? And then in that case, how do you afford healthcare? Like you're presented with all of these problems just based on just being born with an injury. Is that really the world and a society that we want? I would say no. I don't think it is. So I would end it on that. What Sanders and what Ocasio are talking about is a modest capitalism with social programs.
Yep.
That's what it is.
Promote your channel while you're here.
Oh, the Progressive Soapbox. It's Jamar Thomas on YouTube, Jamarl Thomas. If you put that in, I will pop up. Or you could put in the Progressive Soapbox. Any of those things will bring me up in my channel.
Yeah, really, really important, guys. This is how I get my news. Honestly, I go to Jamar and I that's how I get my news. I mean that's just. Those are just the facts. You can also support him on Patreon. I'm putting his YouTube thingy because I can post links. So that's Jamar L Thomas's YouTube link. I'm posting it like 5 times in a row.
We can put it in the description of the video as well. We're
gonna put it in the description of the video. You can also check out the big homie on Patreon. Please, please, please consider supporting him. Take a month off of us and support him. I mean, I'm dead serious. I really believe in what he's doing. To me, he's part of the solution. And just like I said, where, the internet is new. And so we got to figure out, what to do with Jeff Bezos. The same is true of what our power is. People always say, oh, the people had the power, blah, blah, blah. But like, we literally have the power to actually do something significant. Together in our little channel in like 5 or 6 months, we've amassed about like 8.5 million views, right? Mm-hmm. So we legitimately have power if we can create a network of people who are having these common sense discussions. And obviously, you guys saw none of us agreed with each other 100% on anything, but we did agree on real core essential values. And I think there's something for that. And I think we can do something really big here. I know there's going to be people that are going to message me and say, stick to music or whatever, but there's a lot of shit going on. And all of us have levels of influence that we can exercise in our country. So
those people are idiots if they tell you that. You should never stick to music. Look, right now, the United States is engaged in provocation around the world. We're in Syria. Now, we shouldn't be in Syria. We're not legally in Syria, but we're in Syria nonetheless. Russia is in Syria. Turkey is in Syria. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Israel. All of these countries have joined in some weird thing on various sides in Syria. It is very possible that there's going to be a chemical weapons strike. We don't necessarily know whether or not the chemical weapons strike is coming from who it's coming from, but the United States has said it'll strike. Russia has said, if you strike, we will respond. You're talking about what's breaking down to be a similar situation to a world war. Now, those idiots saying you should stick to music is missing the point that you as a human being will be affected by the things that go on around you, whether you're paying attention to those things or not. You should not stick to music.
Yeah. So, and look, I've always said we're going to disagree stridently. We're not going to do any ad hominem. We're going to love each other. And you guys are used to me and Bmfan going back and forth, so you guys already know the deal. Me and Sori had a jihad a couple days ago with the check out the Exodus review. We had a jihad. But I love you.
I love you too. Somebody said, Vin, you should check out Jimmy Dore. Jimmy
Dore is good. Jimmy Dore is badass.
And Jamar did a video together. You should check that out.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, all right, guys. I love you, Jamar, my guy. I love you so much, man. Thank you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you bringing me on.
With your time, man. Like, it's really like a celebrity.
I know.
Celebrity, oh God. Look, I still sound like a porn star.
I really, really will. I'm going to talk about this for quite some time since I'm kicking Chris Culp's ass in Madden. I'm going to be talking about it. Okay, guys. Much love. Take care of each other. We got to go. Vin out.
Sorry out.
Gone.